reflect while asleep. Now a whole world's come in between, it don't make sense. I want to see how it feels when I turn off the screen. What does it mean to be here in real life? Something so sweet about those scenes most rush to delete. Why don't we meet where the sunshine fills our eyes, where the crickets serenade us as we sip in lemonade and breathe the heat on pines and watch the evening fade? And we won't miss all our mirrors, 'cause this is more than glass can give us. Surely this is where our stories all get made. Oh, I'm scared of growing numb. I thought we were close, but when I needed you the most, my heart's a button underneath your thumb. I want to see how it feels when I turn off the screen. What does it mean to be here in real life? Something so sweet about those scenes most rush to delete. Why don't we meet where there's no room for disguise, where the flowers smell real and the rain wets our hair, and we muddy our dresses, but it's boring to care, and let our followers all ditch us when they don't see any new pictures, 'cause this feeling is too good for us to share. Oh,
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the most merciful, the ever compassionate. I begin this in the name of love, in the name of light, in the name of goodness, and certainly in the name of God, in this heart of mine. I would say it's nice to see you all, but I'll just say it's nice to be seen. And it's so good to have you here with me.
I think it's difficult to live with people who are others.
Hello, assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on the third episode of Finding Our Truth in Words. Today I have as my special guest, and I'm super excited to have her. She's the individual that I co-host Saturday's episodes with, which are aired every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So make sure to check that out. Medina is a mother of three. She is a songwriter and a singer as well. And she is also the author of 3 books. The most recent one is titled The Invisible Muslim. And she's also based in Spain, which is super cool. So let's get right into it. Thank you so much, Medina, for joining us today.
Hi, Irum. Salam alaikum. Thanks for inviting me on your show. This is really fun.
Oh, of course. I love that we're doing this today because we're generally doing the live writing. So
Right.
It's a really nice way for viewers to get to know you. Because I'm pretty sure most people who watch the show on Sundays have watched the show on Saturdays with you. So I know if I was a viewer, I would be very interested in getting to know you better. So this will be fun. So I introduced you a little bit, but if you can talk a little bit more about just your background and I guess your style of writing, maybe for those people who don't know.
Yeah. So basically, I knew at about the age of, I don't know, 6 or 7. My plan was to become a writer. That my whole plan was to get out of England, which is where I grew up, learn languages and write books, which is actually effectively what I've ended up doing many years later. So it sort of shows a testimony to the power of childhood dreams. They can sometimes work out in surprising ways. So initially I wanted to be a fiction writer. Like that was my idea, was to write novels. And I have actually got a couple of novels unfinished in my computer. And then I sort of moved on to songwriting. As a teenager, I was like, so initially I was really into like fantasy and sci-fi and comedy. And I sort of wanted to write really sort of fun writing, things that would just grip people, but get them really, just be really entertaining. And I think in a way I've never really lost that, because that was sort of my first joy, was reading the sort of book that you just turn the page and you whip right through, and you're in this whole world that the writer has created, and then you're really devastated when it ends. That's the kind of writing that I aim to write, even though my topics have shifted. So then as a teenager I started getting into playing music. Again, I started playing guitar probably I was in primary school for sure. And I grew up in a household that there was like always guitars sitting around, and my dad would pick it up and start playing, and my brothers played as well. So it was very natural to like begin, and also a lot of singing. But mainly actually through zikr gatherings. So we would get together and sing qasidas and sort of nasheeds. So that was like my introduction to poetry, really, and songwriting, even though it was through Arabic. So it's kind of a funny kind of byway, because I would read the translations, but obviously if you're singing, you get used to the sort of the sonority of the sounds in a different language. So then after some time, I kind of put writing on hold a little bit. I was sort of thinking, I'm going to write novels. I was trying to write novels, and it sort of wasn't quite working. I embarked on a degree, so I was doing that from 2001 to 2005. And then after that I thought, okay, well maybe I can write essays really well, so maybe I should be doing journalism. I tried my hand at journalism, and honestly I found it too dry. Like it's sort of not really dealing with facts and information is really enriching, and it's really interesting, and you can discover, like, especially kind of research and investigation, it's really fun. Like that is gripping to me.
That's the exact same situation, by the way.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. But I want to hear more. So go on.
Well, so yeah, I kind of thought, all right, so I've learned the skill, the craft of essay writing, so I should employ that, and maybe that will help me pay off my student loan. Ha ha. But so I did write a few interviews. I wrote a couple of articles for a magazine called ML in England, Muslim Lifestyle. Islamica, I did an article for them, and I wrote a short story also that was illustrated by my sister that came out in Islamica, but that actually closed, that magazine. And ML has gone to digital. So I kind of wanted to write about themes that I thought were topical and important. And as a Muslim, I felt like there's not enough Muslim voices out there, not enough Muslim women speaking, and really sort of speaking our truth. Like there's a lot of kind of current affairs, news stories that come out about Muslims, but it's always about Muslims, and it's always about the problems of Muslims. And I kind of was like, I'd really like to share something that's a bit more inspiring than that, and also more realistic, because it's not true that everybody is going through sort of horrific situations all the time. I mean, those situations do exist, and we do need to give attention to them. But it's the news skews. That's a catchphrase. The news skews. So you get this kind of snapshot of reality, which is all the dramas and all of the horrors, and it's like, okay, we can't avert our gaze from that and pretend that we just live in this kind of nice fluffy bubble in which terrible things don't happen. But life is a lot richer than that. And if you focus exclusively on all that terrible stuff, you get really, really depressed. And so there is a whole process into that. How do you engage with I guess painful stories, which are real, like real life stories? How do you engage with that kind of in a wholesome or kind of healthy way, that is productive and constructive, but is not going to kind of destroy you in the process? Because like if you take it on too much, and especially if you're a very kind of empathic person, or sensitive person, I guess, that could be so overwhelming that then you actually can't function, and then you're really not going to be able to do anything about it in any kind of useful way.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, when my daughter was born, so once I started having kids, it was like, I'm not going to have any time to write. This is just ridiculous. I'm just going to have to put all of this on hold for a number of years. And I kind of had a lot of desire to write because I've always found that, well, as you can probably tell, I'm a very verbal person. So I understand things by verbalizing them.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's in speech or it's in writing, I mean, writing is a different kind of verbalization, right? So that's something I think we could talk about for sure. Like having a conversation with a friend is great, but there's something that you can do with writing which sort of, I don't know, there's a different kind of plasticity to it, almost like there's an artistry there which is not necessarily there in just having a conversation.
Yeah, you understand things a little bit better. I feel personally when it's written, because it's your private paper and pen, and there's no filters there. At least you should try not to have any, right?
Yeah.
And that's just how I actually understand things better, just by writing them.
Yeah, just by seeing them on a page, exactly. And also there's no time frame there. Like you can write, you can sit and pause and you can think about things, or you can go away, do something, come back to it. Like you're not in a rush. It's not like being on a phone conversation where the other person is going to wonder what's happened if you just stop talking for 10 minutes, you know. Sometimes it brings up an emotion and you just need to kind of sit with it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, when my daughter was born, when she was 1.5, I joined a writing circle, and this was really transformative for me. I really recommend this. And shout out to Kim Henry, who is based in the US now, in I think she's in North Carolina, who set up this circle of it was mostly women. It was almost all women, and my son is creeping behind me. He's trying to stay out of view, but it's so distracting. Sorry. So we'd get together and she would give us some writing, like warm-up exercises. And, you know, I just found that I needed to have just a little bit of prompting and just to kind of coax it out. And then once that had happened, it was like a floodgate kind of opened and like so much would pour out. And we'd also share our writing, and that was something I'd never done before.
Yeah.
So, you know, you'd be like writing for 5 minutes and then actually have to read it, and like you're in a group, it was very intimate groups, about usually like 5-6 women maybe. Yeah. And we would just laugh and we would be like completely awestruck sometimes, you know, the things that would come out, the kind of honesty and the vulnerability. And it's very hard to share your work initially because, you know, you really feel like this is just this deep part of myself and what are people going to say? But once you begin and you realize that actually people are really almost always, you know, very supportive, and especially if they're friendly people, of course. But the point is just to kind of get things moving. And once you get it moving and you can start producing content, you know, material, then afterwards, after you're satisfied and it's all kind of come out, then you can sit down and put a different hat on and go, right, now I'm going to edit it and I'm going to refine it and I'm going to take bits out or maybe just throw it out. But in that moment of creativity, there's something very, very beautiful there to share that. Like on our writing workshops, I absolutely love doing it because it's like to actually do that with another person is really unusual, you know, right? Like normally if you write, you're just by yourself writing.
Yeah. And I think it's so important also for aspiring writers to see the different ways that people write.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, that's kind of a different story, but I agree with you. It's very different from our normal state of writing to be doing it with someone else. It's a much more vulnerable place to be. Yeah,
because it's public. All of a sudden, something that's very private becomes public. But in a way, that's kind of what writing is, and especially writing as with the intention of like publishing or sharing, you know. So yeah, what I was going to say was that I actually began a I can't believe it, like I told him, sorry, 12-year-olds, it adds a little sparkle. It's like my reality TV show. so I started a blog. That was a big kind of step for me as well, because I had been writing a lot in journals and I'd just been keeping it all kind of to myself.
Mhm.
And in my mind, I was going to build it up to a book and then like throw that book at a publisher.
Mhm.
But actually, that's a very kind of precarious kind of way of going about starting a writing career, because actually people kind of need to know who you are. Well, it can work. It can work if, like, if you write this absolute masterpiece and you take it to publishers, but you know, you might spend years taking it to from one publisher to another, and it might not ever get recognized. So in a way, it was also not realistic for me at that time in my life to try and dedicate that much time to one single project, which was like a kind of make or break. So I started a blog called Cave Mum, and that was like my kind of outlet. You know, that was the way that I expressed myself and shared and kind of developed the themes that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about motherhood. I wanted to talk about spirituality and everything in between, like creativity, share poems, because I didn't really feel that what I wanted to do, it wasn't really represented anywhere. Like I couldn't, it wasn't strictly speaking journalism. It was like a sort of a transitional kind of writing that was incorporating lots of different things, stories, um, I guess memoir or journaling, and almost like song, and you know, all kinds of different things. And I couldn't really find any place that I thought would publish that sort of thing, because I thought it doesn't fit in any genre. It's like it's sort of I guess my own kind of thing. And also mainstream publishing and magazines, they don't tend to be very big on spirituality. Like it doesn't tend to be a topic they want to talk about. And
Yeah.
if they do, it's unusual that it's really at least at that time, and this was a good 10 years ago.
Do you consider self-publishing at all?
Yeah, I did, and actually that's what I was going to do. I was writing a lot of poems at that time, because the writing group kind of enabled me to find a path to my kind of poetic wellspring very quickly, and be able to produce material in a relatively short space of time. Because I mean, you've seen the way that I write. Like I kind of write like I'm panic buying or something like that. Like this is the way I go to the supermarket as well. I just go in like 5 minutes before it shuts and just kind of run around and like, because I don't know, I just have this kind of feeling, like this fear that my time is going to run out really fast. So I tend to write in that very kind of once I can turn on the tap, it just pour out, and I let it pour out, because I know that it might be 5 minutes that, you know, and then it's done. And then I was going to work on it afterwards. So in that time, I was creating a number of poems and sharing them in a Facebook group, which was, at the time, it was called Poetic License. It's now changed to Lotetree Press. And that Lotetree Poetry or Lotetree Press, it's actually now turned into a publishing company and an anthology, because there's a group of all kind of like-minded, mainly, I guess, Sufi writers. And there's actually an anthology of that, like a really big fat. I could show it to you. It's around here somewhere. I've been proofreading it, so that's coming out quite soon. That's really exciting. Yeah, I want to get it actually now. I can't think where I've left it. Oh, actually, should I go get it? Do you want to see?
Yeah.
Okay, back in 1 sec. Oh God, I've pinned myself. Oh dear. Water malfunction.
So we'll cut this part out.
Okay, so this is a sneak peek. I'm not even sure if I'm meant to be doing this, but I think people need to know about this, because it's really, really brilliant. And there's a lot of really great poets who are represented here.
Yeah, it sounds very, very exciting and cool.
Yeah, it's called A Kaleidoscope of Stories. And it's big, look at that. That's a nice chunky anthology. So while I was sort of sharing these poems in this private group, I got to the point where I thought, okay, I want to actually make a book now. And I hadn't thought that my first book would be a collection of poems, but I thought, well, this is the phase that I'm in right now, and so I wanted to do it. So then I approached my poetry mentor, he was like an uncle in a way, like a sort of a very dear family friend, a guy called Daniel Abdulhai Moore.
Okay.
Who had been, what was his name? Daniel Abdulhai Moore.
Oh, okay.
And he had a sort of self-publishing platform called Ecstatic Exchange, And so he published his own books through that. And he was a very prolific writer. Rahimullah, he passed away in 2016. And anyway, I approached him to write an introduction to the book, and he said, "Yeah, I'll write an introduction, but I want to publish it as well." So he got it out, and this is actually the so that's what this book is. Love is a Traveler, and We Are Its Path. This is the first edition. You can see it says this Ecstatic Exchange on it.
So you had the second edition because of his
because he passed away. So the first edition, and I'm eternally indebted to him. Really, it was such an act of kindness. He had terminal cancer when he brought out my book. It was one of the last things he did. He was also producing some of his own collections of poems. In fact, I've got two of them right in front of me. I'll show you them. They're on the topic of death. So like I should have shared them with the theme last week about fear of death and whatnot. So Transitioning to Zero was one of them, and that was his last one. Holy Door in the Ground. So he used to write a lot about death anyway, because it's so enlivening to talk about death.
Honestly, if it's done right, and if you build that proper understanding of death and the importance of it, and the reality.
The reality of it is well, we talked about this a lot last week. So anyway, so that was my first publication, and mashallah, he passed away 2 months afterwards, I think it was. It came out in February, March, April. He died in April. So subhanallah.
And what year was that? 2016?
That was 2016.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was my first publishing experience, and then out of Cave Mum, I was hired by a guy who. So my mum has been basically a sort of amateur historian on Al-Andalus for many years, and so she was hired to write a travel guide, an Islamic travel guide, and she actually got chronically ill. So she asked me to help her out with that. So we ended up doing it together, and I did the bulk of the writing, and she did most of the research for that. So that was the second book that I came out with. And then from the blog that I'd been writing, that led into writing some pieces for Critical Muslim, which is a journal based in London. And it's really a very interesting journal. It comes out every 2 months. And it's sort of, they choose a topic, and they have like book reviews, they have poems, they have short stories, they have essays, and it's sort of topical but broader as well. So like it's that kind of long read where you can kind of really plunge into a topic and really explore it, and it's very open-minded. Like they talk about everything. So it's not a very kind of, it is religious in its own way, but it's not narrow. It's very broad.
Right.
And it incorporates a lot of different perspectives. But also it's like the whole scene was so magical, like the trees, the plants. There's a couple having a picnic, and our kids were just walking ahead, and like you could see the whole kind of scope, it was. And then this was just a very tiny frame. It was not enough, actually. If I'd had a really great camera, maybe I could have made a really great photo of that, and drawn attention to it. But for me, it was like that moment was very sort of all-encompassing. Like that would be better expressed through words, because then you can kind of capture a period of time where it's always almost like a movie. But even in a movie, you've only got a sort of, actually it's a two-dimensional kind of frame.
Right.
And with words, you can also bring in everything else. You can bring in smells, you can bring in sensations, you can bring in the temperature, the weather, for thoughts that are going through your head, feelings. Like it's synesthetic. It's like it melds together all these different senses.
Definitely, yeah. I 100% agree. Actually, I don't know if I've shared this with you, but I do photography on the side.
Oh yeah, I wondered if that's why you brought it up.
That is actually why I brought it up. It started off as a hobby, and it's a small business now, but still mostly a hobby. And people ask me a lot, what do you prefer? What is your preferred way of expressing yourself, or what do you just even simply enjoy more? And it's always always writing, like very clearly, without hesitation, I answer that. And there's several reasons behind it, but But what you said is a big one, and I just feel that words come more naturally to me, and when you use words to describe a scene or a feeling or an event, I don't think that I think it's more powerful than an image or a video.
Yeah.
It's
yeah, and then there's another parallel there as well, which is that good writing creates an image in your mind as well. So, but that image is going to be different in every reader's mind. So, like a photograph, a powerful photograph is very, you know, lasting thing. Like it'll reach lots of people, especially if it's, you know, being passed around through the internet, for example. But that image is going to have maybe a different meaning for different people. I guess that's just, you know, visual vocabularies are different from verbal vocabularies. So, but yeah, like if you read a piece of writing, everyone's image will be slightly different because based on their own palette of experiences, like they're painting it in their own palette of experiences.
Yeah.
But like a good piece of writing will definitely bring up images, and you'll visualize something.
Yeah.
And it makes your writer your reader sort of go, oh, you know, like it kind of gives a bit of sparkle. So yeah, once you have sort of incorporated those techniques, then you find it easier to be writing and sort of like, okay, right, that's one. Also, cutting out waffle. That's like the number one thing that everyone can apply. And sometimes it takes another person to look at your work and to sort of say, you know what, you've actually said the same thing in two different ways on two separate lines. Better to condense it together and make it one line, make it more powerful, and then it's not it gets diluted, like your message can become diluted. And that's particularly true for poetry, but it's also true for anything, like any kind of writing, you know, long form nonfiction, narrative nonfiction, whatever. It will benefit from not blathering, for example, keeping to the point. But I think also, once you find your passion, if you find something that you feel really passionate about, then your writing will automatically be better, because you'll feel like, I really want this piece to be really great because this topic is so brilliant and I want people to read it. So I don't want to have any kind of distractions for them or any kind of obstacles. And it'll also just be easier to write because you'll feel that, you know, one way of doing that, for example, is to write from personal experience. So like write about something that happened to you. Like think of memorable events in your life and just sit down and write it down in as much detail as possible, everything you can recall. And when you go into that memory, you'll find details start coming out as well. That, you know,
actually, I've never done that, and I think that would be super helpful for writers.
Yeah. It makes you produce all of a sudden so much more than you thought you were capable of producing. And you can go back over it several times and go, oh, hang on a minute, now I can visualize the flora and fauna of that scene. I can put in the colors of what people were wearing, and like makes it so visually rich and real. And just takes your reader into that scene, into that spotlight.
You know, in general, we don't just start writing in the middle of our, you know, dinner with our uncle or something, you know. Right. We do it after, but we're only able to do that properly if we, you know, develop that skill set of being extremely observational.
Yeah, exactly. Observation. That is a very, very useful technique to develop. It is a kind of, it's a skill in the sense that it's something that you can develop, but it's also like it's a way of being. Like I think, you know, it's just switching on all of your senses. And you know, it's funny what you said, like, you know, you don't start writing in the middle of your dinner with your uncle. Actually, I do in my head sometimes. Like I don't take out the pen, but I'll sort of be walking along and be like, oh wow, look at that rock, it's like this and that, and then I'll be like, okay, right, I need to just shelve that, like pin it to like a sort of mental corkboard.
So
and then come back to it later.
I understand what you're saying though. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of situations where you are able to actually pull out your notebook and write. But that's awesome. I mean, I love that.
I guess that's why people complain that artists can stop being present, because like I read an interview with a guy who was the son of a writer. She was a novelist, and he remembered, you know, growing up, and she would just be like doing something, and then suddenly she'd just like disappear, like mentally she wouldn't be there, and then she'd just have to run off and do some writing. So, and that was like, oh my gosh, that is actually me, because I can, the observation is very, very important. It's vital, because that's what gives your writing that kind of relatability, and all the visual sort of sensual kind of qualities. But yeah, there's times when an idea will just hit you and just be like, I have to go write that. I have to go.
I totally understand what you're saying. I've had this situation so many times. Oh my gosh.
It must be hard to live with artists. I think it's difficult to live with people who are artists, because we just sort of have to do things our own way, and it's awkward, I guess, for other people, because I mean, the thing is, it is great to have a timetable. Like, it is part of the craft of writing, is to like have that discipline and say, right, I'm going to write these. This is the time I'm going to write. I'm going to switch everything off. I'm not going to go check WhatsApp, that kind of thing. Having that discipline, but also the spontaneity element of it is, for me, it's very important. Like,
100%, same here.
Like sometimes it's just not happening because I've got something else on my mind, and I have to just sort something else out, and then I can come and sit down and focus on it.
Yeah.
Or sometimes, I'll just be like, I really want to pick up my guitar. I just really want to do it. I have to go.
And I think we
do it, but
because most of us, we have structure in our life in other ways, and I feel for us, art is that creative outlet. And with outlets, you have to have, obviously, structure is needed too, but there's a lot of spontaneity needed.
Yeah, totally. And I've just been thinking today, actually, this is a bit of a radical thought, but basically capitalism doesn't want people to be creative, because it wants people to consume. So, like, of course, you need to have creatives in order to have something to consume, but there's a very commonly held idea, I think, that art or creativity is for people who are trained in that thing, and that's their thing, that's all they do. And I personally cannot live that kind of life where I just do one thing from 9 to 5, and I go home and I consume everything else. Like, I can't exist like that. Like, that's not the way that I'm built. For sure, there are people who are like that. Like, the thing that they're doing is so intensive that they can't do everything else, so they're just going to focus on that. Like, you're an emergent, like an ER doctor or something like that. Fine, that's great. But there are people who can't function that way. So for me, like, it's very liberating to be able to make things for myself. Like, just before doing this, I made some soap. Do you want to see?
Oh yes, please.
It's like sometimes I have these urges and I'm like, I just have to go and make something now. So this is it's actually solidified quite nicely. It's still warm. It's got roses, and that's mallow flowers on the top. And I've used an old juice carton. Oh my god, flying flowers everywhere.
That's awesome. I love it.
So, like, I'm a little bit of an extreme case in terms of creativity, because I just literally have about 20 projects going at the same time.
That's awesome.
So I don't actually advise people do that, because then you can end up in a situation where your house is a total wreck.
Yeah.
And you never end up finishing anything, or it takes you years to do so. So
it happens to me too, honestly.
Yeah.
Medina, I'm gonna wrap this up and then we can talk.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess it's always awkward to stop and then start.
I know.
Yo, peace everybody. This is your host Kayem. Thank you for tuning in to Heart here at Raise Karma. Today's theme or topic is becoming present. The antithesis to heedlessness. I've got a couple of really dope people joining me today. First, I've got Jamarr Arthur. He's a really dope musician, rapper, drummer, educator, and now the youngest Louisville Metro Council person in history. Thank you for joining me, Jamarr. And also, we got my homegirl, who is the campaign manager, the brains, the muscle behind a really, really dope campaign that if you guys follow me on Instagram, Twitter, I'm sure you guys saw and heard a lot about it. But I'm joined by power player Brianna Wright. How's it going, Brianna?
Hi, how are you doing?
Yo, I said this to y'all off camera, but I love the black. And every time I've seen y'all, it's been black. Let me just off the rip, like what's behind that theme, and why are you guys always wearing black in public?
Well, over the course of history, black has been used as a negative term. You blackmail someone, you get a black eye, a black ball, black magic, black list. And it's important as black people in this country to give a different connotation to what it means to be black and to wear black. So oftentimes when I wear black, it's with that intent behind it to make sure that black has a different perspective.
Yeah, I think that's dope. And I think I hear you in your interviews. You're constantly reminding people whenever you refer to yourself, you don't really only just use the term black or African American. You specifically bring up being a descendant of enslaved Africans. Am I right? And can you go into a little bit of detail about that?
Absolutely. I often use a phrase known as American descendants of slavery. And before I get into what ADOS is, I think Malcolm X might have the best example of why it's important to be intentional about names and about identity and labels, because as we know, his name doesn't have anything to do with where we are today. It is very relevant and prevalent to where we are right now in this country. We see it happening with the protests that are becoming a global phenomenon. We see it happening from our education system to our economic systems to healthcare with COVID-19 and the pandemic. We see it happening everywhere. My entire life is attached to the fact that I descend from slavery. So I use that in the same way that Malcolm X used his X, just to remind you why we're here and how we're here.
I think it's a crucial distinction. And, you know, one thing with all of the protests, all of the knowledge that's being dispersed, I've realized that I live kind of in a bubble. And I'm not around, I'm around musicians, I'm around people of all different backgrounds, I'm around a lot of Muslims, Africans. I be forgetting that there's like real actual Trump supporters or people who aren't Trump supporters, but just, like liberals and Democrats, like all types of people that don't really understand the basics of the struggle of people of color in this country. And I had somebody message me just yesterday on Instagram. I didn't know the account. Some guy named Nick, shout out to Nick if you're watching. And he was like, hey, can you explain to me like why black people think they have it harder? Like what's going on with black people? Like what disadvantages do they have? I just want to be able to tell people when they ask me. And most of my black friends are conservative and against BLM. They think it hurts the movement. So my first response to him was like, yo, before I waste my time, like, let me know, are you trolling me right now? Is this a legitimate question? And it was, bro. It was some white dude from St. Louis. He's like, I'm trying to learn, but he literally couldn't see it. And when you say ADOS, American descendant of slavery, I think it's an important distinction because you could take somebody like myself, whose family comes from Africa, and we are immigrants, and we are refugees. And even if you take immigrants and refugees, straight up refugees from a lot of places, at the end of the day, and my father came here with absolutely nothing, in a lot of scenarios, refugees and poor people and all that are still able to leapfrog people who are descendants of slavery in America. In a lot of senses, you could come with nothing. You could come with just your backpack, but because of redlining, because of neighborhoods, because of where you're placed, because of physical attributes, it's still not the exact same struggle. And when somebody is physically, visibly black, when somebody is visibly black, and especially American black, I'm not talking about, somebody through, and of course everybody has struggles, but you coming from Sudan for med school or whatever. I'm talking about somebody that's a descendant of slavery. You are I don't like to use the victim, but you are on the receiving end of over-policing, over-sentencing, redlining, specific things that have been going on to your schools. I mean, I live in Chicago, man. We're in a state here in Chicago, bro, where public schools like rolling the dice, and they've closed down. When Rahm Emanuel got in office, one of the first things he did was close down, I think, 52 schools.
Wow.
And you've got public schools that are all public. They should be receiving the same funding, but they're completely different from one another in terms of resources, depending on where you live. This goes for police departments. It goes for everything. So I think um, I admire that whenever you speak about you and yourself and your struggle, that you make that a specific point, because there is something to be said to be a descendant of slavery, which A, wasn't that long ago. People act like it was something that doesn't affect us, and B, the ramifications of that are ongoing and existent right now. You know, we're seeing it. We're hearing a lot of talk finally about police force and how police patrols were started as slave patrols in the United States of America. Um, AOC had a comment lately. I think it was like 2 weeks ago on her Instagram when somebody asked her to explain, like, what do you mean defund the police? Like, what does that even look like? And she was like, yo, I mean, it's simple. Like, just look at the suburbs. That's what defunding the police looks like. Like, police in the suburbs don't have, you know, AK-47s. They don't have assault rifles. They don't have all this stuff. But they do have in those neighborhoods good schools, good libraries, community centers, access to parks. And that's really what it is. And that's just for the defund the police crowd. I'm not going to get into defund the police versus abolishing the police. I'm going to let you talk about that. With that said, and speaking of police, you guys are based in the city, Louisville, Kentucky, that's been in the headlines with a lot of action going on. And Jacory, for those of you who don't know, is also known as 1200. That's his artist name. You've been a voice ever since you've been making music, long before your election. This campaign came at a pivotal time to me. I think it was a crucial time for your voice to be heard. And I want to talk about your thoughts about what's going on, what happened. But before we get to you, Jacory, Brianna, I want to ask you, as a young black woman in Louisville, also named Brianna, can you speak to us a little bit about how you received the situation that happened to Breonna Taylor, maybe how that affects you, if it does at all, because it's also not new news. This kind of thing has been happening. But just give me your general thoughts and feelings about what it feels like to be on the ground and of somebody who could have been Breonna.
I'm glad you said that because it's not news, so it's not like astonishing to me. It's kind of the same thing that's happening over and over, but this time it was to a woman in her home, a black woman, obviously. And so I'm happy that it's getting the attention it is receiving because a lot of women who've been killed by police are kind of swept under the rug. And for me to be on the ground, I'm excited to be amongst people who think like me and are fighting for this because that easily could have been me or someone I know. And it may have not gotten the attention, so I'm just happy to be here and be able to bring awareness to it as well.
Cool. Jacory, tell us a little bit about the reception to basically everything concerning Breonna Taylor. I mean, initially we're thinking it's just a woman who got murdered, but afterwards we're seeing all types of cover-up. We're seeing potential motives for why police are busting up supposed drug houses or alleged drug houses or even actual drug houses. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, to understand what happened to Breonna Taylor, who was killed in her home Friday, March 13th, 2020, we have to understand the city of Louisville. And I told BBC News that the city of Louisville might be the capital of American racism. And when I said that statement, I meant it because Louisville was a place of refuge for many rebels and Confederates. And I don't want to say ex-Confederates because to a certain extent, many of these families that were the lawyers, the journalists, the doctors, the people who ran our city, the politicians, the business owners, they still are here today through their descendants, through their white family members. So post-Civil War in 1865 and on, so many of those Confederates came to Louisville and they established this city in a way that got us to where we are today, where the people who run this city, who have the most wealth in this city, who are in charge of this city, stem from plantation capitalism. And when you look at the west end of Louisville, that has the highest concentration of Black people in this state, that has a high concentration of poverty, a high concentration of crime and homelessness, it's not by mistake, it's all by design. So Breonna Taylor is a victim of 2 centuries of police terrorism that has happened specifically in Louisville, because when our police department was founded in the 1820s, It was created, as you said, to maintain, patrol, and regulate slaves. Fast forward 100 years after that, we got our first black policeman, William Wood, and he was killed in the line of duty for mistaken identity by a white drug addict. And then you fast forward a century after that, we have Breonna Taylor getting killed. We have a brother named David Yahya McAtee who was killed right around the corner from my home because the National Guard was here, just like they were here in the late 60s, and they killed 2 black teens. So this has happened over and over and over again. The difference with Breonna Taylor's situation is we saw national momentum because of videos from Ahmaud Arbery, videos from George Floyd that sparked the sudden awareness that happened across our country and eventually across the world of how bad we have it in this country. We are 13% of the population. We are 37% of incarceration. We are 40% of homeless families, 50% of homelessness. We are at the very bottom of a country that we built and have less than 5% of the wealth. And so many white conservatives will message me and argue with me that we just need to try harder. It's not a matter of trying harder. We aren't at the bottom of the country because we want to be. And history has shown us those efforts have happened over and over and over. Tulsa, Oklahoma, where we saw Black Wall Street get burned down, white people in planes dropping bombs on our brothers and sisters who had established a business corridor that was thriving. In Louisville, we had Old Walnut Street, 150 black businesses that were destroyed by a legal practice known as urban renewal, aka Negro removal, where the city planners literally said they did not want the urban core of this city to become a place where Negroes congregated. We have seen black success over and over, and we've seen it stripped away. So Breonna Taylor is, to a certain extent, a martyr. She is a symbol of what it means to be ADOS, to be a descendant of slavery. And while we bang the reparations drum so loudly, because if she had reparations, the police wouldn't need to kick her door in. If George Floyd had reparations, he wouldn't have been unemployed, tested positive for COVID-19 using a counterfeit $20 bill. If Alton Sterling had reparations, he wouldn't have been selling CDs before he got killed by police. Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, the list goes on. Everything is tied to our economic conditions. And that's why I'm not a huge proponent for defunding the police, because as long as our neighborhoods have poverty, they're going to be filled with crime. Thus, they're going to be filled with police. So we need to think about the economic conditions and fight poverty even more so, because policing is just a symptom of that poverty.
Damn, bro, I would vote for you if you weren't already elected. That was hot. That was hot. You talking about urban renewal and some of these basically institutional practices. You've got a really fire song. Anybody who's listening, look up 1200 gentrification. It's bars, and my brother Jacory breaks it down. But going back to Breonna, just to add insult to injury, well, more than insult, it wasn't just that initially we found out that this young woman was murdered. We found out that in addition to that, her boyfriend, who was defending her from people who came to the front door unannounced, defending his girlfriend, not only did he have to deal with her death, but he was actually arrested initially. A lot of this was hush-hush in the beginning. So it's like, damn, not only are y'all getting oppressed, you're getting in trouble for being oppressed. But then a little bit later in the news, and I haven't seen anybody talk about this too much outside of Louisville, is we're finding out that the city of Louisville has been basically participating in drug busts or drug raids and then purchasing these houses for $1. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So I live in a neighborhood known as Russell, and it's just west of downtown Louisville, the downtown business district, which is the economic driver for the entire state. The taxes that come from downtown Louisville, between the Derby, between the basketball games and the concerts at the Yum, between festivals, it stems from downtown Louisville being successful. So with that being said, Russell and West Louisville is prime real estate. But the issue is you got too many ADOS people here. And the city 100 years ago removed the white people that predominantly lived here because of pollution. Those white people got moved out. Black people got concentrated in what you can call modern day concentration camps, which are the ghettos, the hood, the trap. We are essentially trapped here to die because the guns get dumped in our community, the drugs get dumped in our community. But now this community is being taken back by the people who already owned it. This was never really our community to begin with because we weren't here. We didn't take the land and necessarily develop it. But over the course of time, when we were pushed into it, we never took over ownership. 18% of the land here is owned by people who actually live here. The rest of that, over 4/5, is actually owned by people who don't live in Russell, don't live in Louisville. Many of them don't even live in this state. And that is very problematic because as we see, the powers that be are trying to take that land back. And one of the homes that was purchased for $1 on Breonna Taylor's birthday, June 5th, that home was one of a few that were raided that night. Now, unfortunately, because that home was getting purchased and getting targeted, Breonna Taylor's home was getting targeted because of her alleged relationship with the brother who was in that home doing whatever he was doing that I don't know of because I don't know him. But that process of gentrification, of modern day urban renewal, aka Negro removal, is why Breonna was killed. It is very clear. And our city's government, our mayor, have said that's not the case. They have denied it up and down. But if you kill hundreds of indigenous people, hundreds of millions of indigenous people and ADOS people for land, what makes us think you won't kill Breonna Taylor for a house?
It really makes me think about, and it's crazy. It's one thing to isolate a people and put them in a place or an area that you think doesn't have value, but it's crazy to come back knocking on the door when you think it does have value. And it reminds me of our brother Frank Wan, who's Lakota. He grew up on Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota, Native American brother. You know, he was telling me, I went to his house one time, he showed me a map of where indigenous people in America used to live and where they live now. And he was telling me that specifically where a lot of the reservations are today are places that are desolate. They didn't really have much going in terms of agriculture. These were places where white people thought, yo, nobody can do anything with that land anyway. Let's put them over there. So they're literally specifically only in South Dakota because that's where our government put them and said, yo, they can go there to die. They were sent there to die. And the irony is not lost on me that same land, the government comes right on back when they figure out that they can build a pipeline and say, oh, you know what, this is of note for us. And even though we sent you here specifically because there was nothing going on, we did find something, and now we want to come back. So you can't even be alienated or put in a concentration camp at peace. You know what I'm saying? They find something at the concentration camp and come back and try to get it. It's really discouraging. But what I do like, especially given our topic this week of heedlessness, I will say this. I might get in trouble, but I feel like American culture as a whole is a heedless culture in a lot of ways. And me, by default, being a child of refugees, being like one of the only brown people, you know what I'm saying, in Kentucky, where I grew up in Lexington. So, you know, I was always the lightest person in my circles. White people were always like, what are you? You know, and then when I was going to, like, my father had me in all, you know, the after school black organizations, ACE Academy and Upward Bound and stuff. So I'll speak about that. Okay, we're from Africa, but you look a little bit different, you this and that. So by default, if you're in certain circles in America, you might know that the world exists. Americans are kind of have a reputation abroad. If you go anywhere, Europe, South America, Africa, they have a reputation of not really knowing about the rest of the world, not caring, and kind of heedlessly going about their day, driving a Cadillac, not worried about anything. That also goes for domestic politics. You know, people here be like, I'm not into politics. It's not really about being into politics. These are things, especially if you're a person of color in America, that affect you. So some of the positives that I've seen recently, especially with the advent of social media and with capturing videos, is we're finally capturing people's attention. And I think it's forcing people to not be as heedless as they may have been. And you know, we can't ignore the situation. I think it's an uncomfortable discussion for a lot of people. Maybe not for me and you, but for people who are living their life, just going to baseball games, going to work, renting their little boat on the weekend. They're, you know, like the guy who messaged me on Instagram, you know, they're forced and challenged to face a reality that they may not be ready to exist. They think, you know, they're all basically all lives matter. They think all lives matter. You know, they think everything's equal. Um, so the word martyr is extremely accurate, I think, when you talk about Breonna Taylor. And it's just like the videos of George Floyd's daughter who said, "My daddy saved the world." You know, I'm praying that their death did not happen in vain and that this is a catalyst for discussion. And I will say that there are two things that make me hopeful because, like we discussed, this isn't anything new. Like, people are shot, you know. Um, there's a Saturday Night Live skit that had Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock. I don't know if you guys saw it, and it was about the election night when Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were going toe to toe, and Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle are with all their white friends and they're watching like the election results live, and all their white friends, as you see in the night progress and Trump is getting closer and closer to victory, the white friends like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this," da-da-da. And like Chris Rock and Chappelle are like, "We're not surprised. What you mean? What you mean you can't believe this?" You know? And so this is nothing new. This is absolutely nothing new. And so sometimes I'll get in a little cynical phase, like, all right, now what? Like, they were talking about this in the 80s, in the 70s, in the 60s, in the 50s, in the 40s, on and on and on. But the two things that make me hopeful is, A, like I said, with us having these phones and being able to capture video on social media, the world is forced to face some ugly truths that may have been hidden before. I mean, if this didn't happen in 2020, if Breonna Taylor's murder happened in 1995, it would have just been a lady who died and her boyfriend was shooting at the police. That's why she died. And who knows what's going on. Like, that'd have been that. You know what I mean? And that gives me some hope. But I also feel like, I want to say in my lifetime, this is the most prevalent that the conversation has ever been. I want to say I don't know if there's ever been this many Americans simultaneously addressing this issue ever. And I hope it's not just something that lasts for a couple months and keeps on moving. But for you, the two of you, you know, with the amazing campaign that you ran, and I was a fan of the campaign because I know you as a person, and I know the difference between like a politician and somebody who's like, nah, I'm somebody who's been putting in the work. I've been trying to uplift my community, so now let me just do it in this role and wear this hat instead of that hat. With you guys, I'm gonna speak to you first, Brianna, but tell me about some of the difficulties in harnessing this energy right now and taking advantage of the attention that people had and changing it into mobilization and action.
It wasn't really difficult because even though I was the campaign manager, Jamarr is a great person, a great speaker, and captivating. And so it really wasn't difficult to bring awareness to him because he has been doing this work. And so that speaks volumes when he would go and try to get a crowd, they would come and listen to him. So it wasn't hard at all. He did some events and people came out and supported, but it's natural. He would have done those events whether or not he was running. So it wasn't difficult.
How about you, Jamarr? What's your thoughts?
Well, when I first announced, black, red, white, brown, yellow, in between people told me not to talk too much about race and that it would hurt the campaign. You can't win being unapologetically black in this city, as we just kind of discussed earlier, a city that's built on plantation capitalism. And I didn't take that advice. I started to, but over the course of time, I realized I would rather lose being myself than win being somebody else. So we went full throttle. I don't know whoever have been following the campaign. We switched our logo to what the original design was, which was a and what really made me switch it was not only did I feel better knowing that I was standing on my square and being me, but I saw so many candidates across the country who utilized that fist that weren't black. And I thought, how am I too militant? How am I, quote unquote, too black for using a fist when everybody uses this fist? This fist has been co-opted by all sorts of people. So I'm going to use this fist. And a few weeks after I started using that fist again, we saw the uprising, we saw the protests kick off in Louisville. And at that point, race is all anybody was talking about. So for half a year leading up to what we are experiencing now in the midst of these protests, we were already beating that drum. So when this happened, it just elevated our voices even more. It just made our work even more significant. And it also positioned us to mobilize people, organize people to fight against what we were kind of planning on fighting against in office. We were already fighting it as organizers and activists and artists and teachers, but we got a law passed. We got Kenneth Walker's charges dropped. We got LMPD attempting to be more transparent about investigations. We got the mayor shook. We mobilized folks in the campaign in ways that has never been done before, because usually politicians just talk about what they're going to do. They talk. But what we did was walk, and
Yes.
we let it be known that you don't have to be afraid to do that work to fight for social justice on the campaign, before it, or after it.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talk about talking the talk and walking the walk with Mayor Fisher specifically. This is really a moment, and I said this specifically to Tariq Nally, who owns Kayla Flax in Louisville and has worked a lot of different Louisville-based initiatives with his digital agency. But Mayor Fisher has actually been known, prior to now, was always kind of regarded as the most, or one of the most progressive mayors in the country. And when this happened, and he's already had, from our communities, he's already had some, there's already been disdain toward him because of his relationship with this police chief. That he finally, eventually made a change. But I was like, yo, this is the time to put up or shut up. Like, you like playing this role and you want to be progressive in the leading city in Louisville and we're all together and blah, blah, blah. Like, this is, are you going to talk the talk or are you going to walk the walk? And if you do walk, are you only walking when your foot is to the fire, or are you going to, are you going to lead? And I think this has been a test to that man. I don't know what's going to happen with Mayor Fisher. But just like with Lori Lightfoot in Chicago, who was, our mayor was elected, I voted for her personally just because she said she was going to get rid of the system in Chicago of towing cars and putting boots on cars and the over-ticketing, which always affects brown and black folks in communities of color. And it just keeps us all indebted to the city forever and ever and ever. I've been paying $100 a month since I don't know when, just to pay off all these tickets, for years and years now. I voted for just on that. I was like, I don't care what else going on, just get rid of that. But Lori Lightfoot was seen as a champion in a lot of senses for black and brown people specifically, and now you already see her kind of getting put through the ringer, and seeing like, whose side are you on? Are you really on our side, or are you on their side? And I feel like she has a stronger track record prior to coming into office with our people than even Mayor Fisher does. So now's the time for all the leaders in our country to step up. I'm not worried about you because I know who you've been before you were elected, but I am worried about what shenanigans they try to use to defame you or make your job harder. So I definitely pray that you are protected in that manner. We see these shenanigans over and over. I was in Louisville for a little bit working unofficially with the Charles Booker campaign, and he had a lot of support. And then we saw the polling places go from whatever it was, 3,700 to 200, and disproportionately affect certain communities. And I got in a lot of arguments. I don't know why I did, but I participated on Twitter when people are like, well, there's mail-in ballots and it affects everybody equally. But you know, there's always shenanigans, man. There's always something last minute. And I don't doubt with you that you're gonna have some curveballs thrown at you. So I definitely wish you well in that endeavor. I'm sure you're gonna kill it. I have no doubt.
Thank you.
But I want to go to your music because we know you now as Jacory Arthur. I saw your 1200 Instagram page. I don't know what the future holds, but it looks like you took down a lot of the posts. Jacory, y'all, is a dope performer. He's actually learned. You majored in, I want to say, drumming?
Music education. I had classical training at the University of Louisville.
I mean, I've never seen a rapper kill it spitting hard bars about gentrification while playing a xylophone. This is the only man that can do that. But I've seen you as an educator. I've seen you teach children. I've seen you teach and uplift adults. I've seen you perform for like crowds of old white people. You know what I'm saying? I've seen you touch so many different circles of people. And I think that your experience in being able to work with all those different circles, but given the background you have, is really going to prepare you for this kind of next chapter in your life. But with that said, what's up with the music? Are we done? Can we expect new music? Is it just temporarily on hold? Because I know that's like lifeblood for you. I can't see you stepping away.
Yeah, if it weren't for music, making it, producing it, and teaching it, I would be in a prison yard or a graveyard, without a doubt. So the music is definitely going to be something that I utilize, not only for the sake of my sanity and using it as therapy, but also politically. I used to use it as a political tool anyway, but now it's going to be even more so. And I actually have a new song that I'm working on that will be out early next month that's somewhat about the council race and elevating into politics and how important it is to be politically engaged and educated. So I'm excited to put that out, but we'll definitely be still using music. There's so much political education that needs to take place in our community. People's doors that we knocked on who didn't know who their council person was, who didn't know what council did, who will vote for me just because I'm black, or who will vote for me just because I'm a Democrat. We have to change all of that. We have to, because politics is everything. From the money you make to how much money is taken out of it, to the schools your children go to the roads you drive on, to what you can and cannot do in your city. Politics controls that. So it's very important that we know everything that we can and we are well informed about politicians and policies and politics in general. And I'm going to make that happen, not only through office, but of course through continued music making.
Yeah, with that said, if you just joining me, you didn't hear earlier, Jacory Arthur goes by the artist name 1200. Go on Apple Music, go on Spotify. The song I want y'all to listen to, you should check it all out, but check out Gentrification, because I think it's really very hard, I'm speaking as a rapper, to put out music that is informative but not corny. It's very difficult, and I think you do a good job of that. Basically, I want to thank you guys, for your time, for coming on the show. Brianna, I'm super grateful that you joined us. I know I put you on the spot a couple times, but I want to leave you the floor to just close us out in any fashion that you seem that you deem necessary, man. Speak to us.
I don't know. I just want to say thank you and for having us and for having me. That's all.
Jacory?
JacoryArthur.com. I'm Jacory Arthur on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I would love to connect with anyone and everyone. Kayem, we got to make music together. We got to hold space again as much as we possibly can. Let's make this world a better place.
I'll be down there. And if you're watching, stick around. I'm going to get on with the producer, Amna Mulla. We have not been together on screen yet. And for now, keep up with Jacory Arthur at Jacory Arthur on Instagram. That's Jacory, Jec Arthur. And that's that, man. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Much love. For sure. Amna, what's up? You with us? Are we on live? So, what's good? appreciate that. I appreciate you. For those of you who have only watched my show and haven't watched the rest of the Race Karma programming, I want you guys to stick around because after my show, we got my sister Destiny Muhammad with her show Idris. She's also known as Harpist from the Hood. She's, of course, amazingly talented as a musician, but she's like such a dope, genuine, sincere person. I'm actually honored to be her guest for next week's show. Stick around for that. But Amna here is the brains behind Race Karma and the muscle behind Race Karma. So yeah, I want to have you on for a little bit and just talk about Race Karma, what this is, what it means. And just, okay. Yeah. I mean, look, for me, I've got the easy part of the gig, you know. You have to figure out all the logistics and the numbers and the financing. For me, I just get to have conversations with really dope people that I admire and look up to. So this is something that I would enjoy even if we weren't. If we didn't have a camera, I would still love to have a conversation with Brother Shahid and with Muhammad Jamal Dean and with 1200 and Brianna. So it's been amazing for me. I really admire a lot of the team at Raise Karma. I'm familiar with a lot of these people before. I already got a lot of love, you know, for Irum, for the reminders, for Mufuki and Tazeen. And I've had the pleasure of getting to know people I didn't know before, like Destiny, who I was just speaking about. So, you know, I'm grateful to be a part of it. All right.
There is a shaft of light at the edge of the world that is the present.
Good Gratitude Day. My name is Destiny Muhammad, and welcome to Idris, where art interprets the times. This is Raise Karma's third installation based on the book Purification of the Heart. Today, we examine heedlessness, and we take it to the next level by calling it Becoming Present. This special edition will have a special guest. His name is Abbas Muhammad. Abbas Muhammad is a multifaceted person, best known for the Halal Fest and Gamma, gathering all Muslim artists. Gamma is an organization that uplifts and supports the works of Muslim artists globally. Welcome to our discussion, Becoming Present. Welcome to Idris. All right, let me make sure to do. Oh yeah, so it's on. It's recording. Beautiful. So first things first. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, we thank you, Allah, for how beautifully you have allowed our life to unfold and manifest, even in the midst of a global pandemic. We don't take anything for granted. Breath has become this absolute essential thing for us to have, and so we breathe in and out you in everything that we do. Ameen.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So I am here. Woo! I am here with the Abbas Muhammad. He is unexplainably wonderful. And I'm so grateful to have him of my arsenal of family. Not just friends, but family, man. And he can cook. So we gonna get started right here. So Boss is here right now, and I am really excited that he would be willing to come in on the third episode installation of Raise Karma's virtual installation. And we are currently using the book Purification of the Heart, that is written by a 13th century imam by the name of Imam al-Mawalud. I pray I have it. Yep, see there, the book right there. And it is, you are so fun. And this particular translation is by Sheikh Hamza Youssef. So we are not confining ourselves, but allowing the very spirit and presence of the divine to speak to us as we transliterate how it means and how it applies to us in this 21st century experience. So Abbas, thank you for coming on through, brother. I really love you and so glad you could come.
I'm so honored that you thought of me and invited me, and I mean, just absolutely thrilled that you consider me family. That's a very high honor. So I don't know which one of my prayers were answered for me to get this level of honor in this lifetime, but I thank you.
You keep making them good dinners.
It's in the oxtail, I'm telling you.
Not the oxtail. All right. So look, I had a chance to read through your bio, which I had not read, and I think you probably have kept a number of things out because you're so modest. That's what I'm learning about you. Look at that. But what I loved is your many things that you have done in such what some of us would consider a short period of time. And I'm reading your bio, and I see that you are a socialpreneur, which is one of the many hats that you wear. And it says here that you're a socialpreneur with a dream to inspire the dreams of others. Can you speak on that? Because that is so lovely.
Yeah, I mean, just off the bat, that's just a very fancy way of saying I can't figure out what I want to focus my life on, so I'm just going to keep it open-ended. I'm terribly, terribly indecisive. But that's something that I realized is a common thread in a lot of things that I try to set out to do. And I mean, for me, I could tell you what experiences empower me. For example, when Hasan Minhaj came out with his stand-up special, Homecoming King, when it came out on Netflix, and I watched that stand-up, and I've seen so much stand-up. I've seen many, many Netflix specials and stand-up comedians, but this time it was a little bit different, because here's someone, his name is Hasan Minhaj, my name is Abbas Muhammad, we're from the same part of the world, and you know, he basically looks like me, and he's got Netflix and the whole world really looking at him. So that moment, I just felt like finally I could see someone that looks like me doing something that I could see myself doing. You know, this is a moment where I realized, hey, maybe I could do this too. And it's almost as if seeing him materialize that dream of his gave me permission to do mine.
Wow.
And this is just one small example. And so, for example, with a lot of different things that I do, I'll just take one example. So, you know, we're living in quarantine currently, shelter in place, lockdown, whatever you call it, in whatever part of the world that you're in right now. And when Ramadan came around, I wasn't able to have that social interaction where I could feed people. where I could cook for people, have them watch me cook and realize how much passion and love goes into it, and then to try the food. And so one thing that I started doing in partnership with Halal Fest is to actually make cooking videos of me cooking and then putting that out into the world and seeing that people were receiving it in a very similar way. And I think that that what touched me the most about the reaction to these videos is Irfan's son. And he's not even 10 years old. And he would be excited to see when the next video is coming out. And every one of these videos, he actually made it at home. And, you know, Irfan would send me the pictures and be like, hey, check out what my son made. You know, can't wait to see your next video. And that, to see like a young brown boy to be able to see himself in me and to realize that he also could do that. That to me is what artistic liberation can exemplify, right? And so when I say that my passion is to help others achieve their own dreams, is that I hope by the way that I move through life and the way I do things, which is I try not to let fear limit me. I try not to think about the fact that no one like me has ever done this before. I just think about what I want to do and I do it. And so whether it's performing poetry, spoken word, cooking, art organizing, whatever it is, I try to just show up in a way that is purely and authentically me, with the hope and the prayer that that might spark in others that same desire and the same passion to show up as they are. I personally feel that if everyone is able to show up in their true, genuine self, like just completely be who they are and not afraid of that, I feel like this would it would right off the bat solve a lot of social ills. Just to peel, I mean, everyone is masking on during time of coronavirus, but what if we peel those inner masks off and be like, well, this is me. And everyone else is like, wow, I have a me too. And all those me's come out and interact with each other. And we realize like, this is actually a beautiful, like humanity is like this quilt work. We don't all have to be the same, but it doesn't mean that, you know, we can't all be connected. And that's what it's about for me. So I went off on a little tangent.
No. That's real talk. The fact of the inspiration leading others to feel that it's okay for me to be me, however that is, warts and all, you know, unhealed wounds and all, but allow me, because that's a part of the healing. And that healing for me would be also part of the purification of the heart, because now you can bring it to the table and just say, this is what it is. And I can't apologize for it, whether it's historic that brought it on or just something that someone's own insecurities. You bring it to the table, then we can heal it, and you give folks permission, which is inspiration.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I mean, artists, especially yourself, and I see how you move as well through life, it's very inspiring, because I don't know anyone else that could be you at all. And you were just so authentically yourself. And I mean, Hood, honoring your own divinity, you honor that.
Unapologetic. We don't have to apologize or explain for it. Neither do you. You honor it. You honor it in whatever way comes up. You honor it by food. How many men do you know that get it? I mean, brothers that we know like you, getting in the kitchen and cooking it up and talking about, I love how you talk about, let's caramelize the onions. Yes, I'm caramelizing the onions.
Oh yeah, you gotta caramelize those onions.
I know, because they're kind of hot if you don't. All right, you know, we can go a while. So, all right. So like I was saying earlier, I'm in this virtual residency with Raise Karma, raisekarma.org, I believe it is. And we're probably about 20 strong in this residency. We've been together for about 90 days creating content. And we're using the book that you just showed, The Purification of the Heart. And we're focusing in on one of the chapters called Heedlessness, which the co-founder of the organization, Amna Mulla, has transliterated for our day and time as becoming present. But I want to give a definition that Sheikh Hamza has in the book. He defines heedlessness as a terrible lack of attention to what is infinitely more important to one's life than material goods. He says that heedlessness has 4 cures, but I want to present to you the second cure, which it says is visiting the righteous. And so my question, and that can, and you and I had this conversation off center, if you will, in regards to the righteous. When you were establishing one of your many organizations, the one that I'm the most connected with, GAMA, Gathering All Muslim Artists, did you go to someone who you would consider, I'm using the word righteous, but someone who you would consider, whose heart is open enough to hear you when you said, I want to create this for artists, and in particularly Muslim artists, with a focus in on Muslim artists or those who identify? Did you go to someone and say, I'm seeking your counsel because I'm really feeling this in my heart and I want to share it with you to get some insight? Did you go to someone?
Yeah, I really love this. I really love this question. And in fact, even before I even answer the question, I want to take a closer look at what it means to be a righteous person. Because the first time I read or heard this question, I was thinking, you know, are there scholars that I went to? Are there sheikhs or imams of a mosque that I went to? Sort of the more typical archetype of a righteous person in a community is someone who's leading the community spiritually. And that's definitely more formal. It's more traditional. You know, this is sort of the first thing that came to mind when you said righteous people. But then I thought about it a little bit more, because just because you have a specific job title or role in the community doesn't automatically make you righteous. I mean, one would hope that you are righteous before you take that role. But you know, unfortunately, we've all heard stories that that's not always the case, right? And so I'm not speaking against the whole establishment. You know, don't come after me, guys.
No. Respect.
There's just right. There's often individuals who will take on the garb of a scholar, or who will have the qualifications required for people to accept, but it doesn't always mean that you just take it without questioning, without really interrogating. Is this true for me? When I think about righteous people, I think about people who are constantly thinking righteously. They are aware of their own emotional state and align themselves to righteousness, that their intentions, even sometimes with the most mundane things, are aligned to a greater goal of righteousness, and whose actions also reflect that, right? And so to that end, a righteous person could be anyone. A righteous person could be your laundry repairman who came to fix the laundry, and in that process just, you know, maybe said something that inspired you, maybe did something that inspired you. Oftentimes I feel that the righteous people who I meet in my life don't even know that they're righteous people. They wouldn't call themselves righteous people, right? And so that righteousness, that beauty is, and the beauty is not in the label. The beauty is in the being themselves, right? And so with that being said, I felt like I had to name that, just to give context to the stories I'm going to tell. But essentially, when we started off Gamma, we launched in late September. So it was September 24th was the launch date, and we had started thinking about it probably June, July. And during this time, I had a number of phone calls with different people, just sort of thinking about the idea out loud and seeing how folks felt about it. And I had some really long conversations with someone who I know and love and respect immensely, Chef Lisa.
Wow.
And Chef Lisa is someone who has been a fixture of the Bay Area Muslim community for a very long time. She owns Mirchi Cafe, which in Fremont, Mirchi Cafe in Fremont was one of the first halal restaurants in the Bay Area landscape. And now they have a Mirchi Cafe in Dublin as well.
Nice.
And so I had I had worked with her before on a couple different things. She did some food demo at the Halal Food Festival, and so I knew her. I'd known what she is like, and she is someone who really exemplifies beauty in everything that she does. In the middle, and basically through this conversation, I got a lot of support from her. I got a lot of encouragement from her, and I got a lot of advice as well. And as I was talking to her about empowering Muslim artists, as I was talking to her about the importance of building a truthful narrative, she essentially kept mentioning stories that really showed to me how she was already doing this through her life. And so really at that point, whatever I did with the organization would ultimately be with this understanding that I'm achieving, I'm aiming to achieve that which she does through her life. She already supports Muslim artists. She had Muslim artists paint murals inside of her restaurant in Dublin and so on. So after we launched, she was very, very excited. She was one of the first supporters financially as well.
Wow.
And our second event ended up being at her restaurant, where we actually then installed, in the back of her restaurant, we installed walls of artwork. And all of this artwork was created by local Muslim artists. And so we had that exhibit in her restaurant for 3 years. And as a part of that exhibit, one of her restaurant customers really enjoyed a piece and bought it. And in fact, the person who got that money, the artist who got that money, is someone who hadn't considered herself an artist until that moment. So there's something very, very empowering about, wow, this work is valued. Mm-hmm. If this work is valued, maybe this work is valuable, and maybe I have value as well. So this is sort of like the thought process that happens, right? And so really through the conversations that I had with her, through her actions, through the things that she empowered, through the things that she supported, artists were able to self-identify as artists. And I think that awareness that's life-changing, right? You can't, once you realize you're an artist, you can't go back to not being an artist. So that's just an example of one person who I talked to. And I guess in like the traditional mainstream Muslim sense, when you think of righteous person, folks maybe immediately think of a man, especially because these roles in the community are filled by men. But here is a woman, a leader, a business owner, and someone who really inspired me to achieve excellence and beauty in what I do. And a few years later, here we are.
Yes. And I love the fact that you addressed the gender situation, where that in the community that is primarily men that are sought out. And I think back at the origins of the Quran, if you will, where the Prophet, peace be upon him, his first convert was a woman who was in transportation, if you will, Khadijah, and even seeking her as he's receiving the revelation. A righteous individual.
Yep. Exactly.
High five.
Exactly. I think that's a really beautiful example, because Bibi Khadija herself, she was, not only was she a businesswoman, but she was known in the community for being a highly successful business, and to be a woman at that time, let alone a highly successful businesswoman at that time.
Pop collar.
Oh. So the fact that the fact that the Prophet of Islam, ﷺ, as soon as he got the revelation, he went to seek out this individual who is already a righteous individual. I mean, that says a lot. I think there's so much that we need in this day and age from just that simple
simple statement and that simple text. You could go a long way just in the analyzation and application. Not just reading and kind of go, oh no, applying that. And see, and again, which is what I was saying is that how does it transliterate? How is it applicable in a modern day? And you already attested that 5 years hence you are, and that information that Sis shared with you and opening her doors and investing just pushed you and Gamma to the next limit, the next level, not the limit, because it's unlimitless. That's powerful, man. See, Jay. You. All right. So,
Ooh,
if you were to visit
ooh.
an ancestor and go to their gravesite, who would that ancestor have been? Who would you have chosen?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question because it's not even you suggest it as a hypothetical question, but for me it's not even a hypothetical question because um, for me graveyards and burial sites, it holds a very special significance to me, and that's for many, many reasons. In fact, while I was in Saudi Arabia during my formative years, I was growing up in Saudi Arabia, which has as a country, and all the institutions in that country have a very specific perspective and understanding of Islam. And I'm not here to denounce any specific understanding. However, their understanding of Islam did not allow me to fully practice my understanding of Islam because I belong to a group that is essentially not allowed to practice freely.
Wow.
That's all I say about that.
Okay.
And how that is sort of connected is because one of these practices is visiting the graves. And so whenever I go to Medina, for example, we're visiting the grave site of the Holy Prophet, but there are also a lot of other Muslim heroes, if you will, from his time that are buried in that city as well.
Wow.
In fact, 4 of the holy imams are buried there from his descendants. His infant child who passed away is buried there. He has wives that are buried there. And these are all stories. Every person is a story. Every person is history. These are people who interacted intimately with the Holy Prophet, and anyone who interacted with him, their lives would not be the same. That's the kind of impact that he had on the world. And so my practice from a very, very early age, and in fact, you'll see this amongst all across the Shia world, and in fact also the Sufi world, is visiting the graves of people who came before us who were spiritual leaders, right? And in Islam, we have this belief that if you die on the path to God, you are not truly dead. In fact, you are still alive and you're still gaining sustenance from him. And so if you think about, for example, the individuals who died in battle protecting Islam, or the individuals who died in battle protecting the Holy Prophet, who gave their life and met an end because they were on the path of justice. These are not individuals who we believe to just be gone and that's it. And so oftentimes when you're visiting the graveyard of such a luminary, such an esteemed individual, oftentimes there's also an interaction on a metaphysical plane with the spirit, with the soul of this individual who is still alive and aware and has a high position with God. So this is a friend of God, right? And so in essence, for example, Destiny, before I knew you, I knew of your work, and anytime you know of a superstar, a rock star such as yourself, I mean, I get a little bit intimidated. I'm like, how is she going to answer my questions? Is she going to notice me? I'm so nervous. And so before I talked to you, I actually went to someone who I know is your friend. I'm like, yo, brother Jamarr, can you please hook it up with an introduction? You know what I mean? So, and so because of his position to you, he was able to make the introduction, and you're like, oh, okay, Jamarr's friend. Well, I love his cheesecake, so I'm sure you have something to offer as well. And for the record, Jamarr's cheesecakes, man.
Whoa!
Bring them back, Dream Killer Cheesecake.
Yeah.
But I say all that to say that these are individuals who are in a high and intimate position with God. And so when approaching God, sometimes you approach the friends of God first and say, hey, maybe if you ask on my behalf, it'll be a little more special, be a little extra special, right?
Mm.
And so that's on the metaphysical plane.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an understanding that differs in different schools of thought, but this is my understanding personally. And so since this interview is with me, we're going to go deeper into this concept. So I was named Abbas after a warrior, the son of Imam Ali alayhi salam and the brother of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And Hazrat Abbas is someone who was the flag bearer, the standard bearer in the army of Imam Hussein when he was marching against injustice. And he was present in the massacre of Karbala, where the oppressors essentially massacred the family of the Prophet because they would not accept their power, right? So there was this power struggle going on. And so Hazrat Abbas is someone who throughout his entire life, and this is exemplified a lot in the stories of Karbala as well, is someone whose life was a life of service. Wow. He was a leader in his own right, but it was servant leadership. And so, I think about that a lot, and I try to emulate that a lot. From something as simple as, someone in this present company who's sitting here is thirsty, I'm going to be the one to run and get some water and bring it back. These are the stories that we hear of Hazrat Abbas, right? And so throughout my entire life, this is an example that I have in my mind. Then I was blessed enough to actually visit Karbala and to actually sit in the mosque, to sit in front of his tomb. And that experience was otherworldly. I'm literally sitting just feet away from the body of the man who I was named after, who my whole life I have tried to become and to emulate. And as I'm sitting there reflecting on it, from the courtyard, I see this crowd. I'm like, what's going on? And I go closer to the courtyard, and as these thoughts are in my mind, I see that they're serving tea, and they're serving so much tea to everyone, and people are just gathering. There's no charge, there's no fee, it's just tea, and this is some of the best tea that I've ever had. And so that, to me, really just exemplifies unconditional giving. And I think there's so much for that. And I try to always bring things to present day, like what does this mean here, now, is that for me in that moment, that cup of tea wasn't just a cup of tea. Like it was so much. It was a realization of my life's direction, really. And I realized that if I make a cup of tea for someone, it's never just tea. Right? And tea is just an example, but tea is something that could remind someone of home. Tea is something comforting. Tea is, I love you. Sometimes that's all that is. Sometimes tea is just, I love you. Here's some tea. And so to really draw that into today, where a lot of us are going through some difficult times, whether we're facing difficulties with employment, financial issues, whether we're dealing with illness or those close to us are dealing with illness, or even just the psychological impact of being home alone, not seeing your friends for a long time. And I mean, just today, think about it as if you're giving someone tea. Call in, check in, text in. Hey, how are you doing? I thought of you. Here's a picture of a flower I saw today in a walk. Whoever's watching this right now, take a picture of the next flower you see and send it to 10 people who you haven't talked to in at least a month. This is you giving tea to someone. Wow. Because that picture of a flower is going to mean so much more than a picture. Yeah. So try that out, 10 people, and then come back to us and tell us the impact that had. And this is an example of like the immense, like this is an ancestor whose body was laid to rest over 1,000 years ago. But see how that impact carries on. See how that righteousness carries on. Right? And if I can emulate even a bit of that, then my parents were successful with their intention in naming me the name of that great person.
Wow, giving you a name that you can actually live up to. Does that make sense? That you can actually have the aspiration and feel like you're taking on the embodiment of that individual. When you serve as a boss, you serve as a boss.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There is no separation. You have stepped into that awareness, that mindset, the spirit of that individual, and allowing it to take habitation. That is so beautiful. That is becoming present.
Mm-hmm.
That is it in its application as I see it, because now you're doing it in real time. And particularly with the time that we're living in coronavirus, where sometimes folks are projecting and seeing this as the most negative thing that could happen, because we've had so many folks ascend. But also there's a Chinese character that says crisis and opportunity as one character. So within the right.
Wow.
And being able to see the opportunity in a crisis, because this pandemic is a crisis, but what is the opportunity? How does it force you to be present right now?
Mm-hmm.
I can go, but I got one other question. Yay. Let me find it. All right. Because
I feel like I'm so bad at answering questions, because I'll start with one thought and then we'll just take a whole lap around the entire globe and come back and be like, wait, there was a question.
right. But the lap around the globe was so important because it answered a myriad of questions. Just your saying, take a picture of a flower and send it to 10 people that you haven't seen. And maybe it not be because you couldn't see them, that you didn't want to, but the pandemic has limited your accessibility, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, we've got Governor Newsom has put another mandate down in regards to, where you can go, really encouraging by force, stay at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I also love how you were saying, I saw on Facebook that you had posted, I don't often talk about my degrees, but let me tell you that I have this degree and I've forgotten it, but it has to deal with pathologies in regards to the whole virus situation. And you're saying, I'm asking you, my beloveds, stay at home. This,
Mm-hmm.
I've researched this. I'm aware of this. I'm asking you. But like I said, we can go. All right. You getting ready to become a daddy.
Yeah. Oh, baby.
You and your beautiful wife Zara getting ready to step into parenthood. Congratulations, man. And I mean, we're getting very close to seeing those little feet. And
That's
so
right.
my question to you, as you step into this beautiful experience that's only going to grow you at an even deeper level, are there people that you are seeking out or allowing their experience as fathers? And I'll even go so far as, because I know in my community there have been mothers who have had to be fathers for a variety of reasons.
Right.
And are you allowing them to share their wisdom? Or are you watching some folks and just their whole application as a parent,
Mm-hmm.
and saying, oh, I want to apply this to my child? Or
Mm-hmm.
we ain't doing nothing like that with my baby. I'm watching you because I ain't doing none of that.
Right. And you learn from them too. They become your teachers too.
They become your teachers too.
Yeah. I mean, that's beautiful. I'll tell you something really interesting. There are 2 times in my life so far where as soon as I shared news with someone, they immediately felt the need to offer some advice. Whether they had the experience or not, whether they were giving good advice or not, they just feel the need to share advice. Number one is when they first found out I got married. Oh, brother, marriage is a beautiful thing. Make sure that that you always do the dishes, keep your wife happy, you do all these different things. Happy wife, happy life. One of my favorite things that advice that someone gave me that actually really made an impact in my life is listen, now that you're married, you can only be happy or you could be right. Choose wisely. I'm just like, okay, that's there's so much. And so I say that to say that, you know, as soon as I got married, a lot of people just started saying stuff, and not all of it applied to my situation, and not all of it even made sense. And so I realized that that is really just a projection of what they wish someone had told them. And so the same thing happened when folks started finding out that we're expecting a baby. Oh, you're having a baby. That's an amazing thing. Just remember to this, and that. Right. And I'm like, and so now I'm used to it. I'm used to the whole circus. I'm like, okay, cool. Thank you. You know, I'll learn from some, and I'll see, okay, I'll look at the person give me advice. Okay, let's see how your kids turned out. All right. You know, before I start taking advice. But you know, it's so it's just an interesting observation there that people want to share advice, because this is something that that marriage and parenthood come with unique challenges.
Whew.
And one thing that I think is really interesting that I've learned from this advice is that everyone's situation is different. And so, of course, if we find something that works for our situation, we want to make sure other people don't go through those same pitfalls. But the reality is that every situation is different. And so this, now to circle back to your question about seeking counsel or seeking advice in this situation, that presents a specific challenge, because who should I ask, or what even should I ask, if whoever I ask is going to have a different context and situation than myself? So it becomes tricky to get specific advice, right? So now you got to get a little bit more abstract. You got to see the big picture. Like, abstractly, what are some things that you can advise me that I can then translate to my context and my situation? And the one thing that I'm realizing is that you learn so much more from people by watching what they do than hearing what they say. And so there are people who, in my mind, I think about them and I'm like, wow, these are hashtag parent goals. When I see how they interact with their kids, when I see, especially in difficult situations, how they interact with their kids. And one thing that I'm gaining a lot of inspiration from is from our indigenous populations, indigenous communities, from the Native Americans. And I mean, I cringe at saying that word because America comes from an Italian person's name, and they were here long before any Italians were. But the indigenous folks whose land we are on right now, and I want to honor the Ohlone nation, who both of us were in Oakland right now.
That's right.
And the relationship that they have as a community to children. Of the deep understanding of children, and creating a space for them to learn and to grow without putting unfair expectations on them. I feel like as a society we try and rush children to grow up, and then soon as children are grown up, they just miss childhood and being a child. I feel that as a community we have weaponized guilt and shame to try and mold our children to what we think they should be, instead of allowing them to teach us how we used to be and how we could be. And so when in the beginning of this sort of 9-month journey, and right now we're in month, I think we're in month 8. Oh my God. In the beginning of this journey, I was like, I need specific advice, I need details, I need to know, I'm not ready for this. But now I'm just realizing that the greatest thing that a parent can do to serve their child is to work on themselves.
Hello. Whoops.
So I feel as though a good father is someone who is a good person. And this goes back to righteousness. That a righteous person, I mean, if you just look righteous in public, but you go home and your children do not have a beautiful image of you, how far does your righteousness extend, right? But if you are the same laundry mechanic I was referring to earlier, and you go home and your children love you and they respect you and they learn from you, but they also teach you, that's as righteous.
Yeah.
So when I think about, for example, one very common thing that people say is, well, I'm going to raise my kids better than my parents raised me. I know exactly how my parents messed me up. I have seen how that's affected my life, and I want to make sure I don't make the same mistakes, right? That's also an example of learning from someone who maybe you saw a flaw in. But I think that speaks to a much higher concept, and that is, I mean, first of all, we have to learn to forgive our parents because they were doing the best they could with all they got. And as a parent, once you become a parent, I'm speaking as if I've had like 6 or 7, I haven't even had one baby yet, but once you become a parent, from my experience, I will tell you that all of that comes into perspective. And, you know, my parents are always like, well, you'll learn one day when you got kids. I mean, that's true. Once you get kids, you realize the only thing you can do is the best you can with what you got. So when I think about especially what gets passed on through the generations, right? If you go back maybe 4 or 5 generations and one member of your family was, you know, harassed and bullied when it came to a very specific thing, and as a result they developed anxieties, and they passed that on to their kids, who grew up having anxieties around the same thing, who then pass that on to their kids, right? But they don't, throughout this whole time, you get to a point where anxiety is being inherited, but you don't even know why, and you don't know what caused that initially, but it's just being passed down through generations. And the reason why it keeps getting passed down is because it was never named and it was never worked on. But if at some point one of the ancestors decided, I realize that this is having an effect on my life, it is not serving me, why do I keep feeding it? I'm going to stop feeding it. And once they stop feeding and they do the inner work and they realize that that anxiety can be something that needs to be removed, and they walk the walk and they do the self-work to remove that, they're not only healing themselves, they're healing their children and their children's children and so on. And so if, you know, the way I think of lineage now is, if you have a cloth and you have a needle with a thread on it, and the needle goes through the cloth and it comes out and then it goes down again. Then it goes up again and down again. Every time it crosses, that represents a new member to the lineage. And you look at that thread that's passed, and, you know, maybe each little section represents one lifetime, right? And as that thread continues, it gets more and more purified. The goal is to have that thread become pure silk. Because if one of your descendants can achieve a life where they are freed from all trauma, where they're healed from all trauma, where they've broken all the cycles, where they are, so to speak, become enlightened, that is not because of anything that they did in their lifetime. That is because of everything that every ancestor did. And all of us in this lineage are working towards that one individual who's going to come in our bloodline and is going to be completely healed of everything. And so in that sense, fatherhood then becomes this part of a much bigger collaborative effort in which you are collaborating with your father and your grandfather and so on and so forth, and all of your tribe of ancestors, and you're all working together. It's kind of like Avatar: The Last Airbender, that show. It's like you are the final avatar, and all of the previous avatars have been working to prepare the world for you, right? And so in that sense now, I say all of that wordy context just to say that for me, fatherhood is about healing myself, so that I don't pass on that pain and that trauma and the anxiety and the issues and so on. It's to heal that inner, to be able to look at all of that and say, this stops here. I will not allow this to continue onwards. And so to find righteous people who have done that, to emulate that, and to really realize that ultimately I need to work on myself. Children are going to learn a lot more from watching you than from hearing you. That's all I needed to know. All right, I'm not gonna be able to learn this from a book. This is from the book of life.
Yes. In my tradition, of African American tradition in particular, those who walk the path of Ifa, is that their belief is that a couple, one, is that we are the answer to our ancestors' prayers. For those who were enslaved here and brought over into slave ships, and those who actually made it here but suffered such a hardship, horrific experience, the fact that we arrived and are still alive, we are the answer to our prayers. And we literally, as you were saying, we stand on those shoulders and we bring forth a greatness that they only desired to do and knew that we would do it. The other thing within that is that when we heal ourselves and we break that chain of self-hate and hatred and anxiety, that we heal all of those behind us and all of those before us. So they'll never know what it felt like to be anxious and upset and self-hate and blah, 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 blah. They never have to know that. What they can say is, we'll look back at healed folks that I'm standing, of holistic folks, of resilient people. And so I hear that in the same conversation with you. Wow. Daddy.
That's it. That's beautiful. And I mean, the prayers of a mother, physicists have found all sorts of forces in the universe, but they haven't found a force stronger than the prayers of a mother.
Man, we could go a while. I won't, but I would just tell you this, that the prayers of my mother, on many of occasions, saved my life. And I'll even go so far, my father as well. He was his own person, and I love him. And it's his prayers too brought me across the water in a way that only his could. My father was a Navy man who spent a large portion of his military life underwater
Wow.
And I know that those prayers brought me across the water and home to safety so that I could see an Abbas Muhammad. Hey, baby.
That's it. There's so much power to the prayers of the ancestors, and I mean of our parents. And I think about this because we went on the Hajj last year, and it's so heartbreaking that there's no Hajj this year, and we don't know when the next one's going to be because of the pandemic. But I remember going to Hajj knowing I'm not ready for kids, but also knowing that this Hajj was going to be a transformative experience, and that the person who comes out on the other side, he is going to be ready for kids. And I trusted in that transformation. And the Hajj is something that you do it once in your life, but it continues to work on you for the rest of your life.
Wow.
And when I was in Hajj, I made a prayer for a baby, and then a few months later we found out they were having a baby. And so this child is a literal answer to our prayers. And I pray that she comes into this world as an agent of light. I pray that she becomes a reflection of light in everything that she does. I pray that she always have love for the Prophet and the family of the Prophet in her heart as a guiding light. And I pray that anyone who comes from my progeny, from the progeny of any of my loved ones, become healed. I pray that we all become healed, and through our healing, heal each other, heal those who came before, and heal those who come after. And I pray that even through our suffering in this life, because there is so much suffering in life, that I pray that this suffering may not be in vain and may heal us. And I pray that it even heals our oppressors so that they stop oppressing.
That's a lot. Because some folks cannot even see the oppressor as an individual. And it's hard, especially when the appearances is that they are inflicting such hate. And I know that my folks are looking and saying, that's not an appearance. It is happening. Sojourner Truth, the great African-American abolitionist, would pray for the oppressor. And even Martin Luther King, he said he would never allow anything to lower him to hate even the person who was creating the most. And it's a lot. Malcolm X didn't play. He said, you hit me, I'm going to hit you back. And even in his evolution, the objective was to see a transformation in the spirit of human beings with this focus on Black folk. But that's something to say. I want to see the healing of the oppressor. One of the things that I've noted in my life is that I wanted to make sure that whatever oppression or hatred was inflicted upon me, not to inflict it on others. Because sometimes if we're embodying it in myself, to unconsciously or subconsciously inflict it on someone else. And then I become like that I said that I didn't want to be like, or that I hated so much. So the praying for the oppressor, praying for the one who is hating you, whoo, whoo. But it's imperative.
It is, yes.
It is imperative.
Yeah.
I have a ooh, I have a prayer that I do every day, and I'm trying to remember. And because there's the power of forgiveness, and I think it's part of this is that one, forgiving oneself, and even forgiving that individual. I forgive myself and all others. I'm so excited. I don't remember the prayer exactly, but I move into a state of forgiveness because that hate and that rage is too heavy to carry. Many years ago, and I'm not going to keep you, there was a show that was done in about 5 segments called The Count of Monte Cristo. And I think it was written by Alexander Dumas, the French African who wrote The Count of Monte Cristo in series. And this particular count had been betrayed by some folks and put into prison. And he figured out how to get out with the help of another prisoner who knew that he was going to die. And his hate is what he used to inflict, to get his revenge. That hate, he used it to get his revenge and to prosper himself. And the person who had betrayed him married the woman that he loved. He loved this woman. This one went on to marry. This oppressor had a child by him. And now he comes back in disguise, and he inflicts that hate on each one by tearing all of their success down. And he sees this woman that he had loved for so long, and she looks at him. She says, "I know who you are. I remember that I loved you, and I'm so sorry that this happened." She said, "But now my son that I had by that man is looking at a way to avenge his father and the spirit of his father that you have torn down." And he said, "But I still love you, and now I'm free, and we can." And she says, "But I have a son who now feels it is his duty to rectify, to clear up his father's name, not necessarily been killing you, but clearing up all the bad deeds that he did." And now this man had the hate no longer. He didn't have any fuel. The hate had been his fuel, and not love for the woman. It's so bittersweet, it's so powerful. And you're saying to pray for the oppressors.
Because I think that, if the oppressed heal but the oppressors stay the same, how's that changing the system? Right? A broken system is only going to be created by broken people. So if we're not praying for the healing of all people, I mean, even that hatred is a disease.
Yes.
Right? We have to recognize that the oppressors only oppress because they're sick. And they're so sick that they don't see that sickness. And that's why, we're talking about this book, Purification of the Heart. Right?
The purification of the heart. Come on with it.
That's it. But I think even in this moment, and especially in this moment, the awareness that there is also an internal oppression happening. And I mean, we can use the example of white supremacy because it is so relevant now. Actually, it is always relevant, but it is more being in the spotlight right now. If we talk about white supremacy, it is very easy for me to say that person is a white supremacist, neo-Nazi, KKK, that person is evil, oppressor, very cut and dry, black and white, easy. That's it. Go home and I can sleep at night. But if I look internally and I realize that even in the subtle actions that I might not be aware of, am I making a decision not to step out into the sun today and let the sun kiss my skin because I don't want to get darker? Am I choosing to dress a certain way to step into this meeting so other people respect me more? You know, am I presenting myself in a certain way? Am I avoiding certain words because I'm ashamed that my accent might come out? Because that is white supremacy. And in this case, I am oppressing myself.
Yes.
That I am the white supremacist within myself because I allow that to continue to have power.
Which goes back to what you said.
Right. I'm sick of the disease as well.
Yes.
Right. So it's very easy to say, you know, let's go punching Nazis because that's like a clear evil. But how, you know, it's a lot harder to say, you know, we should go punching ourselves for what we allow ourselves to do to ourselves. And if you want healing for yourself, then you should want healing for others as well. And if you can accept that you only harbor this because you are sick, then you are naming it, which is the beginning. The first step towards healing is naming it. And that's like in this moment where we're having all these conversations on a national stage, I gotta really ask myself, in what ways am I allowing my masculinity to further oppression? In what ways am I allowing my privilege in various different ways to continue oppression? And before I really go out and say, you know, take down all the statues, I have to take down the internal statues. I have to take down these internal idols that I've built in myself. And that is why, like, you know, the saying La ilaha illallah, when it was revealed, was the most radical thing that could be said at that point in time, that there's no God but one God, because this was a land where a myriad of gods were being worshipped. But in this today's day and age, to repeat that La ilaha illallah, there is nothing that should have any power. There is nothing that sustains my spirit. There is nothing that has any say in how I should show up in life except for the divine. That becomes the most radical statement. And so that's the same statement, right? And now I don't want to, I mean, I've used the word radical, and I'm Muslim, so that's the whole nother. But the most radical Muslim today could be someone who lives La ilaha illallah in every moment. Because as soon as you allow white supremacy for you to make changes in your life, then that white supremacy becomes an ilah, it becomes a God in your life. So saying that there is no power in my life except for the all-powerful omnipresent, that's it. That is the most radical thing. That is the ideal that all Muslims repeat La ilaha illallah, and that is something that I hope that I can learn to implement in my daily life, and then teach, you know, pass on that teaching to my progeny, inshallah.
Oh, inshallah, mashallah. You gonna do that. Because you've already started the acknowledgement and the healing on yourself, which is it can be difficult. And I'm not a parent, so I'll be clear, but it can be difficult to look at oneself and say, I too need that healing, and I too need that forgiveness. I need this even more so than the person that I've projected it on. I need it. If I'm not working on myself, then I keep seeing examples of my illness presented before me. And in the world of metaphysics, it is believed that our world that we see before us is really a projection of who we are internally. So if we're sitting, and matter of fact, I recall seeing this. I'm trying to remember which Quran surah this is, where it says, if he thinks good of me, Allah speaking, then he will see good. If he thinks ill of me, that is what he will see as well. And you're like, oh, ugh. So it's so if are we thinking ill or good of ourselves, and then having to have the questions with ourselves? And most of the time we'll say, I don't have time for this, or I'm not the one with the problem. They are. But you're asking us to say, where in myself lies the supremacy, the white supremacy? Where in myself, where I'm avoiding the sun because, you know, we don't do the dark thing. And absolutely asking ourselves that question, and where did we learn that? And are we willing to unlearn it? Are we willing? Or we say, you know what? This is how I am, and that's just how it is. And I'm going to my grave with this level of unevolvement, unself-acceptance. I'm going to my grave with this because that's just how it is. Because the absolute is that I'm too scared. I remember a friend of mine says, if it's not there, what will I be?
Wow.
And I said, that's that uncharted territory that you get to go on. And that's where the fun part is. But if you're too attached to that thing, you don't even want to call it negative. You just say, well, that's just who I am. Then you'll never be fully evolved. I think of one of the first trilogy of Star Wars, where Luke Skywalker, he knows his father's Darth Vader. And the father has finally stepped up and prevented this other individual from killing Luke. But he's going to lose his life in the process.
Yes. Yes.
And Luke says, Father, let me help you. He said, you're not going to be able to help me. He said, but take my mask off.
That's it. Oh. Wow.
And he takes his mask off and he sees, Joseph Campbell says what he sees is an undeveloped man. The development was arrested. So all we see are these, you know, look at you. You see, can you feel that? Man!
That's powerful. That's so powerful.
You know, and I love that because he says, you're not, but at least take my mask off. So for the first time in my life, in many years, I'll be able to have the sun kiss me before I step out of this body.
That's it. He started to identify himself with this mask. He's like, I'm not Anakin Skywalker. That person is dead. That's what Obi-Wan Kenobi says is he killed your father. Darth Vader killed your father. And he didn't identify as Anakin anymore. He identified as Darth Vader. Which is, it's also funny that Vader is German for father.
Wow.
Right? And so I'm so glad that you brought up this example, because Darth Vader is someone. So we've been talking about righteous people. We've been talking about sitting with righteous people and learning from righteous people. And Darth Vader has been one of the most influential people in my spiritual development. I can't even begin to tell you, I have posters of Darth Vader pointing, like the Uncle Sam pointing, it says the Empire needs you. My floor mats on my car are Darth Vader. My notebook in which I first started writing my poetry, it's a Darth Vader. It's like every page there's Darth Vader. And the reason why is because Darth Vader to me is not a story of evil, of good versus evil. I feel like, George Lucas made a story of Luke Skywalker. He's the hero and the hero's journey. But I never identified with him. And I don't know how anyone can. And he's someone who's never done anything wrong. He's someone who just by sheer existence, with no skill, he has no skill, just with sheer existence saves the universe. He never actually did anything. It was just the people around him. He's just mediocre, privileged person just moving through. But anyways.
That's a perspective. We're gonna get into that another time. That's a
Hot takes. So man, I'm just like, how many people can I offend in one conversation? They'll be coming after me today. But with Darth Vader, his story to me is a story that I can relate to. Here's someone who started off with a pure intention, with a clean intention, who saw the people that he looked up to, the Jedi Council, go against their words. He got his trust completely broken. And then at that point where, he's stepping into fatherhood, he's having twins. And everything that he does is to try and protect his children and to protect his wife. It is something that purely came out of love. But then when the people who are supposed to represent goodness betrayed him, and he felt the rug pulled from under his feet, he went to the only thing he could think of, which is love through a lens of revenge. Love, because revenge, I mean, how can you seek to avenge something that you didn't love in the first place? Right? These emotions cannot exist without a foundation of love, right? So we come back, so then, it goes on to his lust for power, his greed, and these are all things that we all suffer from regularly. This is not like, oh, that's an evil person. This is, how can I recognize? And you look at his evolution in each episode and be like, who is my inner Anakin, baby Anakin, lost his mom? Who is my inner, Anakin who just got betrayed? Who is my inner Darth Vader? Who is my inner oppressor? And ultimately, the story ends with him removing his association with his mask. So how many masks do we put on in our life? And when someone says, who are you? Show yourself to me, name yourself to me, introduce yourself to me. I mean, you're just talking about my bio. My bio is not me. That's a mask as well. Socialpreneur is not me. That's a mask I put on when we want to talk about, socialpreneuring. Even like as a poet is a mask I put on when I go on stage. But all of these are masks. And so ultimately it's a story of someone who fell into temptation, as we all do, who identified himself as his mask, as we all do, and then through the power of love, actually step back into the light, remove that mask. And in that moment, it reminded me of all the stories of, you hear about the sinners who in the last moment of life did an act of good, and in the last moment of life said, La ilaha illallah, in the last moment of life turned their heart towards God, who did sincere tawbah from their heart, and God accepted it in their last moment. And this is why I'm like, when people talk about righteous people, I'm thinking about the sinners and the saints. Because until the person has left this earth, their story is not finished. And just because someone's a sinner today doesn't mean they're not a saint tomorrow, and vice versa. Just because someone's a saint today doesn't mean they're not going to be a sinner tomorrow. And so that pen hasn't lifted. That story is still being written. And so right before his story ended, the power of love came, wiped his inner oppression, and allowed him to step into the light, where he sincerely, in my heart, I feel like he did the Shahada again after he took off that Darth Vader mask. God accepted him, and the Force accepted him, and he ascended as an ancestor, as in the last scene when you see Obi-Wan Kenobi and you see Yoda and you see Anakin. And this is a sign of that forgiveness. And that he couldn't do that until he had first forgiven himself, and he couldn't forgive himself until his son forgave him. And this is why I think of Darth Vader as a righteous person and someone who's inspired me in my spirituality, in my fatherhood. It seems crazy, if you just say it offhand, but once I've explained it all, you can see that is like, that's how I aspire my life to be, is to get to that level where I could take my mask off.
We can go a while.
I'm so glad we got Star Wars into this conversation. I'm so glad we spoke that.
I didn't know Star Wars was one of your things. And I didn't see Star Wars until 20 years after it had came out. It was, and I watched that first trilogy on that day, January the 1st, 1992, the day I decided to lock my hair. I'm sitting and twisting my locks, and for an entire day, I'm watching what I had never seen.
Wow.
And because I always wondered what was this that folks were so excited about, and then after I saw it, I was like, oh, yeah. And then turned around and watched the Joseph Campbell series on the Hero of the Thousand Faces, I believe.
Right.
And even taking it even deeper. Man, Abbas Muhammad. We can go, but we will have to do another interview. I am so grateful that you had this time, man. We could get even more in depth in this conversation on heedlessness and the power of being present. We're going to have to do it again. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. This is Destiny Muhammad's Idris. Art interprets the times. So please, you could come on through. Sending a big shout out to Raise Karma for inviting me to be a part of this residency. Please tune in to the next episode. 10,000 blessings on you and your new baby. I cannot wait till the pandemic is over so I can give you, my sister Zara, and baby, a big old hug. Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a beautiful conversation. It's always a beautiful conversation with you.
You always bless me. All right, everybody. Peace out. All right.
Wow, guys, that was beautiful. We're gonna go straight into Jamarr, which is our next episode, and his show is dope, so stick around.
Yo, what up, though? Langston, Hues, Jamarr Johnson, Raise Karma, God-loving basketball. Week 3, heedlessness, becoming present.
You gotta be present, man. Gotta stay present.
What does heedlessness mean?
Heedlessness, in my opinion, means it's not really being aware of your call, not being really aware of what is divinely ordained into your life as like a gift or as a way to enhance your life and to express your life at the highest, from like the highest standpoint. So, heedlessness is being able, basically it's not really taking heed to those that direction, that I'm saying, that calling on your life, and not fully maximizing your opportunities based on just ignorance or maybe just confusion. Maybe you just don't really know. Maybe you don't agree with your gifts, or agree with how you're, been called to live your life. But that often leads to, God always shows us, ways in which these things are not good for us, and He always brings us back, in my opinion, always brings us back to that way that's supposed to be right for us.
Can you recall a time that you were being heedless?
Yeah, man. Saying it like it's like a cool thing, but nah, yeah. I mean, I think I've been heedless a little bit, like in my early stages, like coming out of college, and basically I wasn't really sure about who I wanted to be. I was playing basketball. I lost the love for that. I was working a regular job, and it didn't seem like it was fulfilling me. So I just didn't really know which way to go with my life, and I started to try to narrow down what was like my talent and what was my gift. But yeah, during that time in college, I just was like, I didn't know who I wanted to be. I didn't know who I wanted to commit to. I didn't know what lifestyle or what thing I can do in my life that was going to actually give the things that I truly valued, because nothing seemed to be working at that time.
Okay. What do you mean you lost your love for basketball? Because as of today, as of right now, you're a professional, American-born Indonesian basketball player. So,
right. Right.
At what stage did you lose the love for basketball, and then you just decided, okay, whatever, I'm gonna hoop anyway?
Well, yeah, I lost it in college, man. I lost it like my senior year. We had just won back-to-back conference championships. So
you guys won back-to-back, and you're like, this is too easy, I'm bored.
No, seriously, I really was on I think I went to a college that wasn't really fit for me. Like a lot of my classmates who I came in with, they ended up transferring schools. And even though I was one of the primary players on my team, I just felt I was kind of being underappreciated and undervalued. And I just thought that I was tired of being like the unsung hero. So I was playing on a team where we were having great success. I knew I was impacting the success, but at the same time, I felt as though I was being underappreciated, and I just didn't have the role, and I wasn't fully utilizing all of my skills and all of my talents in the games that we were playing. So my senior year, I just was like, man, like I can't do this anymore. Like I want to be valued. Like I want to feel like what I'm doing on the team
is appreciated.
Yeah, is appreciated. And at the end of the day, like I talked to the coach and we had discussions and things like that. And he was telling me how valuable I was to the team and things like that. But I think I just had an idea of what it should feel like in my mind, and I just drifted away from basketball. So I quit the team, and I was like 19 at the time, or 20 years old. I just quit the team, and I was like, man, I can't do this anymore. And started, drifting off into like but a different working life. I was working, and I just didn't know where I fit at that time. But yeah, I fell out of love with it because it's like you want to feel appreciated for what you do, And in any love relationship that you have, like it has to be consensual, you know what I mean? Give and take. And I just felt like I was giving more than I was receiving.
Would you say that was a time that you were being heedless? Because you got this physique, right? That is a basketball player. Yeah. You got the skills and the talent to perform and execute on the court. Yeah. You already have the proof with winning back-to-back championships, so this is already validation. Yeah. Would you agree that this is a gift from God?
Yeah, yeah.
So you got this beautifully wrapped gift from God, and it's already showing you and taking you to new places in life, and then you decide like, nah, this ain't for me.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and it's kind of crazy now thinking about it like that, because when you know that you are good at something, oftentimes you're looking for the next challenge. You're not really like you want to challenge yourself. You want to grow, and change and evolve. So I felt like, I mean, I knew I was a good basketball player, but I wasn't showing how good of a player I can be on the offensive side of the ball. On that current team. Okay. So basically, as a basketball player, our egos are wrapped up in how we score the ball and how we win, and how we stop other players, And I just felt like I was a better player than I was able to show. And even though I knew I was talented, I figured that I had to be a better way than that. So when I quit school, when I quit the team, got a job, and the next one it was reminded to me, my life is only fulfilled playing basketball or doing something through basketball, whether it's coaching kids or whether it's teaching the game or working in a basketball sports program and any kind of program that involves basketball. For some reason, I would do it for free. I would live my life just doing that. And after I left the game, it was kind of just showing back to me like, yeah, that is the way. Like basketball is what I'm going to dedicate my life to. But it took a recommitment and a readjusting of what I thought basketball was. You know what I mean? It wasn't just playing the games and hanging out with the buddies on the weekend. It truly was and has become a lifestyle. How I eat, how I live my life, like honoring God through basketball, and just being focused on my my body, my training, and all these things has really changed my life.
So in retrospect, it's sort of like your solution for being heedless, and your solution for one, and in your case for you being heedless at that time, and becoming sort of present and aware, was sort of like the saying goes, you don't know what you have until it's gone. You don't know what you have until it's gone. So I'm asking you, like, your solution for overcoming heedlessness in this case was not knowing what you had until it was gone, and then you had this appreciation for it. What did you do? Like, so once you realized that you did have this love for basketball, because I know personally your story, right? You were able to join Athletes in Action, where you literally went around the world to preach about God and spirituality, spirituality via basketball.
Via basketball.
Took you around the world.
Yeah.
And then, at whatever stage you decided to start playing ball or hooping again,
Yeah.
you had the opportunity to even come to Indonesia,
Yeah.
play on the national team,
Yeah.
go over to Thailand,
Yeah.
play on the teams there, like
Yeah.
literally around the world,
Yeah.
just to play basketball,
Yeah.
skillfully and talentedly. Like,
Yeah.
so that's a gift from God, right?
Yeah.
Some people can't even get a passport.
Yeah.
So what I want to ask you is this. When you finally realized you didn't know what you had until it was gone, what did you do?
Oh, man, I dedicated my life to it. I sacrificed everything for it. I would wake up at 6 a.m. before work out, go to work on my lunch break.
Where were you able to hoop again? Because you already left that team, right?
Right, so basically I was working a regular job, and I had a little apartment, you know what I mean, and I was just working, but I would play in men's leagues. So there was a men's league that my co-workers were joining.
Where were you at that time?
I was in Chester, Pennsylvania. So I was
Pennsylvania.
in,
So you were playing a league, a men's league in Pennsylvania.
Actually, the league was in Delaware, but give or take, around that area is kind of pretty close. But I was still in the U.S. And yeah, just playing in the men's league. And I was telling my coach, because I was so convinced now, because I'm going to tell you the day that actually really convinced me. As I started going on this path, I started getting little clues that I was on this path because random occurrences would happen. Like the most random things would happen, and I would be like, yo, I would feel in alignment with my goals and my pursuits. Like I would feel like I was going to play basketball again.
Mm-hmm.
So mind you, I had never been overseas. I never flew on a plane. All the things you mentioned, I never even experienced. I never had a concept of those things until
Couldn't even imagine them.
Couldn't even think that I would ever be in Indonesia, ever play for any of these things. So, but I did have a dream and a hope that I would possibly go overseas and play basketball professionally. Though I did have this hope, I had this passion for it. So during this time when I'm sacrificing, I wake up at 6 a.m. work out. On my lunch break, I work out. After work, I work out. I was like locked in. I didn't have like many friends. I just was dedicated, training every day. Like, and I was playing in these men's leagues, and my coach was like, I was like, yo, coach, like I'm actually about to, I'm going overseas. Like this league, I can't keep playing in this. Let me know when you have any information, and I'll go wherever I have to go. But I can't play in leagues like this.
So at this time, you're already thinking about like, yeah, I want to hoop overseas. I want
Right.
to go abroad.
Yeah.
I want to hoop overseas.
Facts.
So you went to your coach and you told your coach like, man,
no, I'm going overseas. Like I gotta play in a better league.
But
than
did you
this.
already have an opportunity, or you just put it out in the universe?
I was just speaking it, like, but because I already felt like I couldn't get the proper exposure if I was in a men's league like this, because there's nobody watching a men's league game unless you like a star playing in a men's league game. You know what I mean? I wasn't gonna have the proper exposure, so I told the coach like, if you know anything, let me know. A month later, he tells me about this team in Maryland, and I don't have a car. I don't have, man, it's like a 2-hour transit from where I stayed to Maryland. I didn't care, bro. I just was like, I'm getting down to Maryland. So this is a funny story. This is how I started realizing that this was going to happen. So I go to the train station. I got $22.
$22.
I Googled it.
22.
I Googled it. It said $22 to get, to where I had to go.
So you had $22 and from Maryland to, from where? Pennsylvania?
Well, it was like, I kind of went from Delaware, so it was like halfway
Delaware,
there.
okay.
Yeah.
So you only had $22.
Yeah.
You Googled the cost to travel from Delaware to Maryland, and it was $22
on this train.
On this train.
So I get to the train station. I got $22 ready. I'm hyped. I hand it to the ticket booth guy. He excited. I'm like, oh yeah, so I want to go to this place. He's like, okay. He's like, but are you coming round trip? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, it's gonna be $44. I'm like, wait, no, it said 22 on the website. He's like, no, like, that's only one way.
Oh snap.
So I'm like, man, forget it. I'll walk home. I got these basketball tryouts. I'm making this team. I don't care. So I'm waiting for the train to come, and all of a sudden the train conductor like walks past me and is like, follow me. On some like Jesus type, like follow me, Peter, follow me. This like just follow me.
Like
I'm
just a saint.
Yeah. So I'm like, he's like, follow me. I'm like, I'm not gonna follow this dude. Like, but I see he walking, and as he's walking, the train is coming in. So the train's coming in. He's walking this way, and the front of the train is on that side. So the train's pulling in, all the cars or whatever. And the train conductor comes out. I see him like talking to him, like politicking, shaking hands. I'm like, what's going on? Like, why would I follow him? So I'm like looking.
But did he hear your story, or he was just?
No, look. He walks back to me, and shakes my hand and gives me back $22, and he sits me in first class on that train. The train conductor's like, don't worry about it. We got you.
Wow. But did he hear your story, or maybe the other guy told him?
No, I just said I was trying out for a team in Maryland, and I don't care if
I have to. To the conductor?
To the ticket booth guy.
Oh yeah, okay.
I was like, I don't care if I have to pay $44. I don't have that, so I'll go there and I'll walk home if I have to.
Yeah.
And he was just like, no, man. He talked to the guy and came back, shook my hand, gave me $22. And that's when I was like, all right, yo, something's helping me. Like, something's guiding me. And I know, like, it was like, yeah, I'm saying I couldn't deny it at that point. So, man, I have countless stories like that where I just would meet these random people who just would guide me and give me that little bit more, like, more motivation, that little bit more, like, yeah, like, I'm on the right path.
Yeah, like an angel or something.
Yeah, like a guidance, you know what I mean?
In my tradition, we call it Awliya.
Oh, what's that mean?
It means like a friend of the Most High.
Oh, wow.
These just random people, they're just so pure and so beautiful in nature and character that we don't actually know for some of them, but for some of them it's written out. These are definitely friends, but it could just be people who are compassionate, right? And the energy, like energy attracts like energy. Right. So that's crazy, man. So it's laid out there for you. You're not thinking about this other stuff no more. Like, man, I don't want to do basketball.
Yeah, no, I'm like completely like locked in. I'm dedicating everything to it. I'm working out every day. All I do is watch basketball videos, and all I do is like read my spiritual text. So I would meditate. Here's another funny story. So I got into like understanding like attracts like and all that. Cause I was working my job, and this guy walked up to me because I was like a field marketer. So I'll be talking to people every single day, like having conversations, trying to get them to upgrade their home. Okay. So I'll be like, hey, like, how you doing today, sir? Like, my name is Jamarr from Power Home Remodeling. I see you have like original windows.
Shout out to Power Home Remodeling. Original windows.
I see you got the original windows. So I would like to, actually a couple of our guys are in the neighborhood. Are you normally home in the mornings or evenings? We'll give you a free estimate for your windows. You can save it for the future. And he's like, he'll pick mornings or evenings, whatever. So I'm going through this spiel with him. And he's like, hey, man, like, after I kind of signed him up, he's like, do you want to do this for the rest of your life? I'm like, nah, man, I want to play basketball overseas. He's like, really? He's like, follow me. But I have like 5 follow me stories.
Follow me.
He's like, follow me. I'm like, bro, like, what's going on? So this dude walks to his car after he signs up. I sign him up, call whatever, sign him up. Walks to his car, opens his trunk, and he pulls out this called The Secret. And it talks about law of attraction and like attracts like. But even biblically, we know you reap what you sow and all these. So I was just like, I got this book. He's like, if you do what this says, you will never you'll have the dreams that you're hoping for. Yeah. And I'm just like, so I already was like spiritually like in tune. Like I would be praying and spending time in communion with God. But then when I seen this, I started really putting the two together. Like it was more practical. Like I was literally writing out like I'm going to play basketball overseas like 100 times. Like I was literally like visualizing, sitting there quiet and like visualize what it would be like. I wake up in the morning, I eat some oatmeal for breakfast. Then I go to practice. Then after practice, I have some. I was just saying these things.
Setting the intentions, right? Which is actually a form of prayer as well. I mean, like everyone prays different, right?
Yeah.
So you're just putting it forth, and you're like, God, grab them. Hear me out, God.
Yeah.
Let me. We can do all of them, or the one you just choose, or the one you just know best is for me. Just hear me out.
Yeah, yo, and that's how I approach God too.
So he gave you the secret, and then what else happened? And you were learning about this.
Yeah, so I got the secret, but that story I just told you prior happened after the secret.
Okay.
So the come follow me thing was like a trend that was happening throughout the journey. Once I realized that.
So that was before the conductor.
Yeah.
The train station.
Right.
Wow, that's crazy.
And it was like a series of like 5 events that happened before I actually took the flight. Because when I went to Indonesia, I didn't come back for 4 years.
Okay.
So I feel like it was like so many like.
Well, what happened when you went out to try out in Maryland?
Oh man, well it was 3 tryouts. So the first time I had this miraculous situation. The second time, I got halfway there, and I
miracles.
I called a friend, and he drove me there. And then the third time, it was a 3 tryout, program or whatever. And then the third time, I just was like, I think I actually. So I was at work, and I'm talking to my coworkers. Like, yo, I'm playing ball overseas. I'm trying out for this team. I'm going overseas, man. This job is cool, but man, I'm out of here. Like, I'm playing ball. I was like, oh man, keep going. Like, talking to me, whatever. And then my coworker, my friend Matt Rockel. Hey, shout out to Matt Rockel if you're watching this. Matt Rockel. So I was like, yo, I need a car. I can't keep taking the transit. He's like, oh, you can buy my car. I was like, word? He's like, how much? He's like, $200. Like $200?
Hey.
If you get paid on Friday, I got you. So I bought Matt Rockel's green Chevy Cavalier. The radio was popping too. I had a booming the whole time. And I bought the car for $200, and I drove that last tryout to Maryland. And I'm literally driving And the drive, I love driving, and it was like a scenic view. I was crossing this bridge. It was like a big open like lane. The clouds were like, it seemed like they were just like talking to me, and I just started crying, bro. I'm just driving like, I can't believe I'm actually
crying.
like, yeah, I'm just
That's
crying
real.
like, cause I'm just like, I can't believe I'm driving a car to these tryouts that of a team that's like, it just was crazy. So I ended up making the team.
Wow.
I actually posted the video of some highlights of the team's first win. This is a brand new team that just started out of nowhere. It's a brand new team, brand new management. Joined this semi-pro league at the time. Our first win was like epic. Like we played against some really primetime players, and I had a great game that game. And we had a great season, had a pretty good season. And then the last game of the season, we're in Connecticut. The week prior, we get a new guy on our team. His name is Gerald Stansbury. Hey, shout out to Gerald Stansbury. Gerald Stansbury, because at the time, I'm so inclined. I'm trying to tell you, I was so locked in. Nobody recognized me anymore because I didn't talk. All I did was think about playing basketball overseas and God. If I wasn't reading like a spiritual text, I was watching basketball all day. But in the game, I would like pray before I shot like, on the free throw line because I was like, yo, there's no way I should be on this team right now. So I'll get the ball. I would like, I'll do like a little prayer. I would thank God. Most of the time in basketball, you do that after you make the shot. But I'm at the free throw line. I was like, God, I'm here. I'm thankful because I'm here. So
Doing what you love.
Whether I make it or not, I don't care. And then people would joke like, you better make that shot. Or if I miss it, like, oh, God don't love you like that. I'm like, man, whatever, man. So I would shoot the ball, and I would always pray first.
Yeah.
And this guy, Joe Stansbury, was like, yo, I see you really got this like spiritual thing going on. You should try out this team called Athletes in Action. They travel all over the world, and they talk about God and basketball. I'm like, yo. And actually, in Connecticut, we were roommates.
Yeah.
So he came to the team the week prior, joined practice for a week, and then we were roommates. It was like, come on, it was like divine that we were even in the same alignment. And he told me about AIA, Athletes in Action, and then I just applied. And the whole Athletes in Action, that's a whole nother story. But just, yeah, man, like I started seeing how things were just falling in place, and the season ended, and I just started applying for Athletes in Action. I actually had to raise, I think it was like $2,000 US to go on the trip, but I didn't even pay the money. But actually, I mean, obviously I didn't pay it, but so many people were just giving, man.
Yeah.
And supporting. Like, oh, you want to do that? Oh yeah, sure, no problem. Living Faith Church, they helped me out a lot. Like so many of my coworkers helped me, like my mom, my dad, my aunts and uncles and stuff. Gave $20 here, $10 here. So, yeah, man. Once I fully like dedicated, I was 21. I remember the day like it was yesterday. I was like, God, I don't care what happens from here, wherever you want me to go, whatever you want me to do, whatever you want me to say, I'll do it. Cause I can't live like this. I gotta like live my calling. I gotta change my life. And I just left it like that. But for some reason, ball sort of just like manifesting in different ways. And I would go to the park and I would see kids playing. So I would just be like, like I would just help them out. Like, you know what I mean? Just having like going through drills and things like that. And actually when I came to Indonesia, I was doing the same thing. I got hired to be like a basketball coach. Okay. So I was coaching kids and
This is before you started playing professionally in Indonesia?
Yeah, so for 4 years in Indonesia, I didn't even touch a basketball as a professional player. Like, I was 2 years as an assistant basketball coach for a big university, and I was 2 years as a youth pastor. So I was working in church, working with kids, mostly international kids at the time in Jakarta. So yeah, man, like basketball, I kind of gave up. I mean, the fact that I came overseas and I was still playing basketball, I thought that was enough for me because I was coaching the game. I was like, I'm coaching basketball. I'm living in Indonesia, this Jakarta. Like, where am I? Like, it was just like
unreal,
mind blowing. Yeah, it was like different culture. People eating with their hands. I'm like, yo, what's good? Like, it was just different. Everything was different. And I like that feeling.
Do you know why they eat with their hands in Indonesia?
No.
So for the viewers who don't know, Indonesia is a predominantly Muslim country by population, and it's the most populated Muslim country in the world. And so this concept of eating with the hands is something we call the way or the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And so he was known to eat with his hands, and so Muslims, they try to emulate the way of the Prophet or his sunnah. And scientifically, we find out that eating with the hands, it has like a lot of enzymes that helps in digestion and breaking down the food.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, as soon as I tried it, I'm like, the food tastes better. I don't know why. I just like you get the. I don't know, you get the ambiance.
Yeah, but it's also popular in Africa as well.
Yeah,
I think also
parts.
from a very similar influence. So in your case, essentially, not realizing what you had until it was gone allowed you to become more present.
Yeah.
But for the people who may not be in a situation or have the opportunity to do away with something and then realize it was something that was for them or they needed, what are ways for these individuals to become more present?
More present. I would say appreciate where you are right now in your journey.
Gratitude.
Yeah, be thankful for what you do have in your current situation. There's a lot of things that may just look like they're off or like they're not for you, based on like your own perceptions of, you know, comparing yourself to other people or feeling low self-esteem about your own self or just internal things. But I think if you can be present enough to appreciate where you are right now, like in your given situation, it's like right now, like what's around you, what have you earned, like where are you at, like, you know, how do you feel? Majority of the time you're going to see that there's many benefits even in the most troubling situations, you know, and by having a better understanding and awareness of that, you're less to like jump quickly to something, you know, better in your mind, you know, just because you're going through challenges, or you're not leaving the situation just because you're having a bad moment, you know.
So being grateful in all conditions, in all situations. And before we leave, I want to share one story because I always remember this story since I was a kid on the topic of heedlessness and being mindful and present. There was a religious man, and he was in the middle of the ocean drowning. And then a raft came by, and it was like, I don't need that raft. God's going to help me. God saved me. And then a boat came by. It was like, I don't need that boat. People were like, get on the boat. He was like, no, it's okay. God's going to save me. God got me. Then a helicopter came by, threw down the rope. I'll be fine. God got me. And then he drowned. And then he went to heaven. And he said, hey, God, I prayed to you every day. I called to you every day. Why didn't you help me? Why didn't you save me? And God said, you didn't take heed. I sent you a raft. I sent you a boat and a helicopter, bro. So I always found that as a funny story when I was a kid. Jamarr Johnson, Langston Hues, Raise Karma, God-loving basketball.
Hey, don't be heedless.
Don't be heedless.
I've been broken so long, I started to think it was my natural state. When they said you just have to battle all, tears turned to ice as they ran down my face. You might blame it on the winter, when life goes underground to grow. I'm just waiting for my springtime to melt the snow. I need to find my sweetness, dig deep beneath all this mess. So sick and tired of being on thorns. Where are the roses that from heart earth are born? I need to find strength and weakness, turn from cowardly to fearless, give up criticizing and scorn, and see the golden lining behind every storm. Never, never, never ends. Never, never, never ends. This spiral of violence is us versus them. Hunters shooting in the dark, mistakes a child for a dog. Why don't we always pretend that we're so damn different? We'd smash the mirror and call it self-defense. It's all illusion. Let's start seeing friends instead of foes. And some will blame it on immigration, as if no one ever crossed the seas before. I'm just waiting for passion to tear down every wall. We need to find our sweetness, dig deep beneath all this mess. So sick and tired of seeing all thorns. Where are the roses that from heart earth are born? We need to find strength and weakness, turn from cowardly to fearless, give up criticizing and scorn, and see the golden lining behind every storm. We need to find our sweetness, dig deep beneath all this mess. When anyone is beaten and so the whole earth starts weeping from mountain to core. We need to find strength and weakness, turn from cynical to innocent, give up criticize